Only one thing I can think of. Nuclear option.
Way too big a risk.
How big a risk?
Planet threatening.
So, what is it you're gonna do?
Pull to open.
Pull to open!
Yes, and what do you do?
Those are powerful, intelligent creatures. I'm backing them.
Don't be stupid. They will kill you.
I don't think so. See you later.
Here come the drums!
So here it comes, the sound of drums. Here come the drums, here come the drums.
Boom, 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 boom.
Hello, and welcome to Pull to Open, an ongoing quest to watch all of Doctor Who, the entire television program, every single story that's ever been broadcast on the tube in random order. I'm Pete Paschal.
And I'm Chris Taylor. I'm the real Chris Taylor. All you other Chris Taylors are just imitating. And I am one of the two guys on this podcast. We're just a couple of guys, a couple of journalists. We've written about Doctor Who a lot in the past. We love the show. We love being very random in talking about the show. This is a way to be structured and random by going on a very random journey through the archives of the history of the television show Doctor Who. Pete, where on Earth and in the universe have we been?
Previously on Pull to Open, our first episode of 2023 a few weeks ago was actually a clip show.
Yes.
So we
prior to that,
all of our ratings, and the reason I'm bringing it up is because we not little known, but we've upgraded our codex, guys. The Pull to Open codex is fully armed and operational. It now has tons of, well, not tons, but it has all of our ratings. And we've gone back and retconned our ratings in that show, the first one of the new year, so that all of our ratings are now up to date, including our two newer ratings, the Viscount Banger, which are reserved for the best of the best, and of course the Professor Hater, which is not so good episode, but at least we learned something.
Always learn something.
Check that out. It's a good listen. Then we were rocketed forward. No, we were rocketed backwards. Sorry, but we were rocketed forward in time because it was in 2023 the following week. So in that sense, it was rocketed forward. But no, we went way back in time to the Celestial Toy Maker, our first full-on kissing episode of the podcast.
And it was rocketed back because prior to the clip show, we'd been at the Gunfighters, and Celestial Toy Maker's one story before the Gunfighters. So it was quite extraordinary random behavior by the randomizer. Yeah,
we were on a bit of a Hartnell kick.
Yeah.
And then we jumped forward to the Fifth Doctor era, season 19. We did a little 2-episoder known as Black Orchid. Nice siesta in 1925 England. One thing I wanted to note about that one, we did talk about getting a bingo card of all the 2-episoders of the classic series. And we thought we were getting close. And then upon reflection, as I was listening, I was like, wait a minute. There's the same mistake we made when we were thinking about 3-episoders, which is that it's that one season of Colin Baker throws everything off because they did 45-minute episodes for one season of the classic series. So there's actually a ton of 2-episoders in that season from Colin Baker. So everything from Revelation of the Daleks to Mark of the Rani to Attack of the Cybermen. Some of them we've done are technically 2-episoders. I don't know. I always think of those as basically 4-episoders that were stitched together.
I mean, if we are counting them as 2-episoders, then suddenly I'm not so keen to have a bingo on 2-episoders in the classic series. Sorry, Colin. Love you, Colin.
And there is one more proper 2-episoder, which is to say 2 25-minute episodes or thereabouts in the Colin Baker era, and that's of course The Ultimate Foe. His last episode is 2 episodes, so there's that one too. So there's a bunch. It's a bigger bingo card than we thought, but we'll get there.
Yeah, I'd forgotten that we divided up Trial of a Time Lord, didn't we? That's going to make it easier whenever we get to it. But anyway, yes, we skip forward, and I really love. I'm gonna step on your rhymes here, Pete, by revealing what we did, because basically I want to take a look at the overall. We've if you want an example of what Pull to Open can do for you in terms of giving you the whole gamut of Doctor Who almost at once in a few episodes, we've gone from Hartnell to Davison, and now right up to Whittaker, right up almost to the present moment, just a few stories behind. Revolution of the Daleks, the New Year Special 2021. the last of the seasonal specials.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
Bringing us very up to date, and we've done it. We've sort of covered in one short hop via Black Orchid, via a brief rest in a 1925 country house in England. We have skipped across the entire show from Hartnell to Whittaker, and it's quite extraordinary to do that, and to see them next to each other is very interesting for us. We hope it's interesting for you too.
Yeah, it's very interesting to see like how the storytelling. Obviously, the storytelling's changed. Obviously, the production value's changed a ton. But it's all still Doctor Who. Like the concepts, the ideas, the seeing the TARDIS as kind of a plot device in both the Toymaker episode and this one. It's all. It's really the same universe, They're really going. It's just really all connected. I mean, we draw connections all the time with various segments and things in the program, but it's easy to do. It's like the canvas is there for us, and
that's right. And in this case, I mean, one thing I noticed is like the challenges of having three companions in the Davison era, which we come straight from, like the last. I guess Earthshock was the last full story with those three companions, but I'm counting Adric as being missing for a part of Earthshock. But maybe the last full story with three companions in the Davison era, right up to
Turlo. Remember, Turlo was there for a bit.
That's right. Yes. Okay.
So all the way up to Terminus. We've actually already done the last episode with three companions.
Yes, but it's a mark of the Davison era that there were a couple of lineups of three companion TARDISes, TARDI. It's the same TARDIS, a three-companion TARDIS. And now we go straight to, the end of the FAM, the most recent three-companion situation. So what a comparison that we have to talk about.
And we'll be doing a lot of comparisons. This is a lot of interesting things about Revolution of the Daleks. Obviously, as a seasonal special, it's unusual for a lot of reasons. It brings together a lot of things in the Whittaker era, and there's a ton of references. It's also this weird length of 71 minutes, which longtime listeners who follow TLDW know we have a bit of a dilemma, but that's
we do. I'm looking forward to finding out how many seconds I get to summarize this thing. Spoiler alert, it's me.
Stay tuned for that. But first, listeners, we're going to go into the Pull to Open feedback loop, where we like to talk about all the chatter around the podcast on social media and beyond. And today we have something beyond social media.
Beyond.
Yeah, it's actually, guys, we have a review to read on the air because, of course, reviews are a thing that we love to talk about. First thing in the feedback loop, because reviews are very great to do for the podcast, because all podcasts really thrive on reviews. Reviews really help our visibility in the Apple Podcasts app. If you know anything about podcasts, Apple and Spotify are the two major places people find your podcasts. And the more reviews that people leave in the Apple app, the more visibility the podcast will have. And one great listener has left a review, and I'm going to read it now. And the review is from JC17_Ace, which is very Ace.
Yes, I was going to say, it's obviously one of Ace's burner accounts. Thanks, Ace.
And they say, this podcast is an excited and accessible review of episodes from both the modern and classic episodes of the television show Doctor Who, a show with over 50 years and 300 episodes of content. It is a great listen for anybody and any fan of Doctor Who, new and or old. Chris and Pete have a solid knowledge base and a true love of this show.
Sorry.
Most of the time. Talking about the number of episodes in various stories. The podcast is filled with that love and supplemented with great facts, tidbits, and headcanons galore. Yes. One of the best aspects of this podcast is how they watch through the show in random order. While I was initially turned off by this idea, I've come to appreciate and look forward to the really unique and interesting connections to be made across the timelines. It is great to hear reviews of all the episodes I've seen, but just as good to listen about episodes I haven't seen. I've found that the summary and discussion are just enough to sweeten a first-time viewing without ruining my appetite. I am working my way through this podcast season 3 here on Apple and on Spotify/YouTube. Sylvester McCoy is my favorite, and I can't wait to see the randomizer take the show to more of his episodes. Chris, your wife has a fellow 7th fan out there.
Love it.
That's what this person wrote, by the way. I'm not just interjecting.
I know.
Last sentence. This podcast is a banger, a Viscount banger. Oh,
and they've even spelled banger correctly, as in the place. Yes, not the way that we've bastardized banger, but the original banger. Wow.
Guy. Yeah. What a thing we probably couldn't trademark. And by the way, I should bring it around to if you can trademark that. But what a wonderful review. I love this. Yeah. It's really great. Thank you so much, JC17 Ace. What my favorite line might be, I've found that the summary and discussion are just enough to sweeten a first-time viewing without ruining my appetite, which is exactly kind of what we're going for, right? It's like we want to give you a taste and then hopefully intrigue you enough to go check it out if you haven't seen it before, or rewatch, as in a lot of cases, and maybe with a little bit of the sort of insights and observations that we're bringing to it. So I love that they're extracting that. They're buying what we're selling, which is
I love it. First of all, I love that they're making headcanons. Headcanon is a noun now.
Right.
Headcanons galore.
One word noun.
I love it, but also I love that this is someone who was turned off by the random approach. So
right, that's good feedback.
If you're listening to Pull to Open right now and you're like, I don't know if I like this randomness. This seems a bit too unstable for me. Unstable. But no. See, there are other anti-random people who have been converted. So we welcome all of you in the non-random Doctor Who cult, you weirdos watching it in regular order. Come on over to our side. The water's lovely, as Ace will tell you. But I love that it's like I'm a bit concerned sometimes that we kind of reveal too much about the story, that we're basically spoiling it. But I also know from my research into how there are a lot of studies on how people process story, and a lot of them say that roughly about 50% of the population, it seems, actually prefer a story if they know the spoilers. Which is not necessarily what you would expect, but it's certainly true for me in a lot of cases. Like, if you're really invested in a story, like, I wouldn't necessarily have wanted the spoiler about David Tennant showing up at the end of The Power of the Doctor. Spoiler if you haven't seen it. But that said, I think that there are definitely a lot of stories where I feel like I have a better handle going in if I know the story first. I think that definitely applies to a lot of Doctor Who. And so I'm happy that we don't need to worry too much about spoilers, sweetie, in Pull to Open, because there is a whole fan base out there that actually enjoys what we're putting down in terms of giving you some structure before you enter this often confusing realm, especially of classic Who. It's good to know the story first.
Yeah, and I didn't. The only thing I'd have to add to that, which I totally agree, there's a happy medium with spoiling things, and it really depends on the audience. But I think there's a lot of people out there who, a lot of our listeners grew up or are only familiar with the new series, and listen and then sort of learn a bit about the classic series. And I think as those people get drawn into the classic series, for starters, they probably don't mind getting spoiled because they think they're not going to watch it anyway. But I would hope that as we've talked more about the classic series, the connections that are made, some obvious, some not so obvious, that has inspired people to probably watch the show before they listen now, because you might.
That is another option.
Check it out.
If you're in that side of the Doctor Who cult, you can always, we do announce at the end of every episode where the randomizer is taking us next. You do get to hear our shocked outrage. It's one of my favorite things when I re-listen to a Pull to Open, is like listening to us, it's like me reading out a number, you with an intake of breath. And like, no matter what it is, like, we're super excited about whether we go there. It's quite charming to listen to. I say, as one of the guys involved in that little scene that we replay every time. But yeah, it's we encourage you to watch along with us, and then listen next week and share your thoughts on were we right, were we wrong, were Were we absolutely lying? Were we lying about the number of two-parters? Tell us. Rule number one: pull to open lies. But we do it exactly. We do it accidentally. We can't keep it straight.
So, as if there was not enough greatness in this review, JC17 Ace also gifted us.
Yes.
With one of our trademark thing, which has become basically our trademark thing, with some Doctor Who emoji episode titles. And in true game show fashion, which of course this podcast has already gone well down the slope of becoming a game show with our various segments, I'm going to quiz Chris on these 3 emoji titles. And we're going to see how he does. I think I figured them out. So this is your first exposure to all of these, I believe, right, Chris?
Oh, here we go. My God, I've got this plus TLDW. Oh my! Wow! I really need a no prize.
I think you do. So if you guys remember, Dalton was 1963 used to leave these, and the last time we did this, we were both flummoxed by one in particular. So I've done a little bit of advanced research here. I think I've got these. I don't have an answer key, to be clear, but I've sort of, I think I've worked them out. So hopefully we won't leave anybody hanging on what these are. But Chris, are you ready, sir?
I'm ready as I'll ever be.
All right. So you've got the notes file, I believe, so you can see the emojis.
I can see the emojis, but I've got them out of my sight because I want you to describe them to me, and I'm going to build them in my head.
Okay, and I'm going to, when we do the YouTube, we're going to have them. We haven't done this before, but I'm actually saying this live now so that I can't get away with not doing it when I cut the video. So we're going to have the emojis visible. So here we go. First puzzle.
First review.
3 emojis.
Yes.
First one, Easter Island statue head.
Okay.
Next one, drop of blood. And vampire.
So, okay, not full circle. We know that's full circle. What was the vampire one that we watched?
State of Decay.
Oh God, yeah, State of Decay. Oh God, right after full circle. Anyway, totally getting distracted on my first attempt to answer. Okay, I gotta say, I'm gonna immediately guess out of the gate. Stones of Blood.
Boom, boom, boom. Yes.
Hey,
Stones of Blood. God, I don't know if the vampire is necessary, but
it does help nail it down. Yeah,
I guess you could argue. I think the villain there is the Seraph Diplos. I forget if I think she's a vampire because she was ageless. You know, she was there for hundreds of years and was sort of the same person. So it's kind of vampire-like. Okay, ready for the second one?
Ready.
All right. Again, 3 emojis.
Mm-hmm.
You got smile emoji with the teeth showing.
Yes.
You have female cop, and then you have lollipop.
Wow. That sounds like a reference to specific story beats and something I haven't seen.
I don't know if you've seen this one. I'll give you a hint. Though. It's the era of Doctor Who you rage quit.
I the McCoy era?
When was the time you rage quit? I'm not going to give you any more hints.
Yeah, that was McCoy. So, I don't know. Is it? Oh God, I sort of feel like, is it the Happiness Patrol?
Yes. There it is. Well done.
I know enough about the McCoy era, even after having rage quit it.
All right, you've done those 2. We're going to level up. In terms of difficulty. We're going to level up in terms of number of emojis. Are you ready?
As I'll ever be.
5 emojis. Here we go. The sun. The sun with the face. It's the face. Fire.
Okay.
Astronaut. Weird, hypnotized, dizzy face with the squiggly mouth and loop eyes.
Looping eyes, yeah. Spiral eyes.
Door.
And then what was the last one?
Door. The last one's a door.
This is... So it sounds like this is a classic... not a classic Who, because New Who is like when there's way much more spacesuit happening.
Right.
It makes me think, isn't this the plot of 42?
You got it. Half hour to figure out. I was going through the codex up and down. I was like, is it Impossible Astronaut? Is it Waters of Mars? Because there's like spacesuity stuff in that one. I was going through all of the New Who stuff. I even went back to Classic Who, and I was like, is it the Ribos or something? I don't know. I was just going through anything that was even close. I thought maybe the Sun Makers because of the sun.
Yes,
but that didn't work. And I finally was like 40. Like I was just going almost episode by episode, and it was like 42. Bam. Yeah, because you have the sun, the conscious sun creature, spacesuit action. You have the doors, and then there's the bit, of course, where, and spoiler alert, I keep saying that, but like the Doctor is briefly taken over by it, and it's all like, I guess that's what the eyes are, the eye emoji.
I remember so little about 42, but I do remember the sun. It's pretty much this emoji review is basically all I remember of 42. It just happens to have hit the right beats that is stuck in my brain. I had such high hopes for that episode, and it really did not live up to them.
Oh wow, we might be have a split on that one if we ever get to it. So that'll be interesting. I think it was fond memories of 42. I really, and I remember it a lot, mostly because of that line, "Burn with me, Martha," which Tennant delivers really well.
Isn't it? 42 is immediately followed by Human Nature, Family of Blood, Blink. Like it really gets into a series of bangers after that. So maybe it suffers by comparison.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair to say. I thought it was pretty good. All right, good stuff. Well, thank you again, JC17 Ace.
Yes, thank you for helping me win. Your bribe is on the way, Ace. Thank you for making it easy for me.
All right, your no prize is on the way, but you, listener, can also win a no prize by leaving a review and have it read live on air. And we look forward to that and more emoji titles, which, of course, I will remind, goes straight to the Codex with credit. So you will be forever part of Pull to Open in Doctor Who history by leaving some emoji title reviews. Yes. Links out to the original reviews and or tweets if you send them that way, which you can do at Pull to Open 63 on Twitter, I will add.
In the far future post-apocalyptic Earth, when the Codex is the last thing that has been etched on like platinum tablets and distributed to the people who will worship the Codex, it is your emoji that will last into that dark future. So please participate. Bring on your reviews, but also bring on your emoji reviews of stories of the show. See if you can challenge me, because I'm feeling pretty undefeated right now.
Yeah, that was a good round. You're going to be a returning champion.
I love it. This is like the Jeopardy of Doctor Who game shows. I'm going to be the Ken Jennings here. But yeah, great stuff. Thank you for the review, Ace. Thanks for the challenge. Please, everyone, join in and see what you can do to stump me. So, returning to the feedback loop.
Yeah, another place you can leave comments, emoji titles, or reviews is YouTube. And YouTube's going great. We're, of course, at youtube.com/pulltoopen. We finally finished season 3 of the podcast on YouTube. So our entire season 3 is up there. So we've fully caught up on season 3. Sorry. We're finally up to season 3. Season 2 is complete. My bad. I misspoke. Season 3 we're now on. So we have a few more in season 3, which actually includes a couple of bangers coming up in the next few weeks. We have Girl in the Fireplace and Silence in the Library in the next few weeks. So those are coming Wednesdays on YouTube, along with all of our social videos and plot summaries. So watch for those. Those are happening. But season 2 is all there. You can go season 2 back to back if you want to. And we're about at 511 subscribers last I checked, but we really want to get to 1,000 in 2023. So if you do subscribe to the podcast on another platform, please fire up a web browser, go to our page on YouTube, and subscribe there. It's really, really going to help the show. We also have getting great comments on YouTube, and we have a comment of the week that I would love to just get into here, which is from Nathan Smith. He's a friend of the pod, comments often. Thank you, Nathan. And this is on our Black Orchid. I think it's on the podcast. It might be on the plot summary. But he says this. Apparently, the Doctor's comment about liking trains as a child was going to be addressed by the half-human backstory of the 90s revival, in that the Doctor's human mother took him to live with her on Earth for a time. I love this comment because it's like, one, information I didn't know.
Yes.
Also, two, we're eager to forget that the 90s movie of Doctor Who did say, if not establish, but it did say that the Doctor is half human. Now, because of the backlash, they've never really returned to this idea or explicitly done anything with it. They haven't denied it, but they've borderline denied it, I'll say. But they haven't come all the way up and said like, no, that was a mistake or whatever. But it's an interesting era of the program. Obviously, this is the Wilderness years. This was the big one shot that was supposed to bring it back and didn't. And there was the bold choice where they said the Doctor was half human. And if it makes you wonder how the series would have leaned into that had a series been commissioned from that movie.
It's interesting because spoiler alert, one thing I think we're going to be talking about a lot with Revolution of the Daleks is the weird priorities of showrunners, and the people charged with sort of the overall structure of the story of kind of, revealing stuff about the Doctor's past and looking into the Doctor's past. I just love the idea that a showrunner, like potential showrunner, someone on the TV movie, hoping that this is going to become a thing, is like, what the audience is really curious about? You remember Black Orchid? You remember that 5 minutes at the start where they're talking about trains? Like, I'm sure there are thousands of people out there who remember that. Like, what? Why? Why did the Doctor love trains? Tell us. Which sort of seems like a thing that JNT would do, and maybe even a thing that Chris Chibnall would do. It's like sort of refer back to this thing that maybe 3 people remember. But I love it. I love it.
Yeah,
for us, obviously, we would have been, very, very likely one of those people. Certainly, the deeper that we get into Doctor Who, the more we become those people.
Well, you could imagine the people making Black Orchid just throwing this in and thinking, we're just throwing it in. Well, won't people wonder that were there trains on Gallifrey or something? It's like, they can worry about that in season 40. And now here we are, like basically season 40, and it's like the joke becomes the real thing, right? So, I mean, it's funny. Doctor Who has a big, long history that we just talked about, and will continue to do that. I mean, sure, why not? Pull out something from whatever era. And we just talked about Mavic Chen because RTD is apparently going to make a reference soon. Tweak on these things.
It's funny because there is stuff like that. I think probably the primary example is that the Doctor's 12 regenerations, right? Was always a thing hanging over the show, and Moffat knew that, and he knew that we were all wondering about it, and he would tease us constantly about how he was going to resolve it, and we'd miscounted the regenerations and all of that, and then it's finally resolved in Time of the Doctor. Right, Doctor gets a whole new round of regeneration, so it is legit. It's just also kind of funny, like. Revolution of the Daleks answers that question of like, when is the Doctor going to mention Ryan's yellow beanie? Just it's stuff like that. Of like, it's really weird, misaligned, understanding of what the fan base wants and is curious about. Sometimes when you're a showrunner, it's a weird disease that transcends both classic and modern Who. But I love that we've uncovered another one.
Yeah, and I don't want to sound too enthusiastic about it. Like, I do have criticisms of this too, and I think they were going to come out in the podcast about Revolution because it is a lot of referencing of things. And you can kind of have too much of that, right? Like, I kind of hope as RTD goes forward, as much as he's going to reference Mavic Chen and other things, at some point you just got to sort of get on with it and create your own era and your own things that other people will refer back to. As opposed to constantly stirring, sort of, I think what we're getting at here is sort of constantly stirring the fan service soup,
Yes.
And it's
and RTD knows that. Like, that is so in his blood. He does that in his sleep. He manages to mingle the I'm constantly paying attention to the mainstream audience and what they're going to know, and also I'm going to throw in like background references which don't necessarily impact the whole story, aren't necessary for understanding the whole story, but are going to give the long-term fans and the people who read Doctor Who comics in the 70s, you know, they're gonna have fangasms watching this, right? We already know that's kind of what he's going for, but he does that. You never need to worry about RTD getting the balance wrong. He just always makes it accessible, so it's definitely the way to go.
Cool. So thank you again, Nathan, for leaving the comment. Keep on listening, keep on trucking. Moving on in the feedback loop, just to close it out, we're TikTok. We just finished off our second TikTok live that we did today, which was a great time. We're doing those at the beginning of our tapings. We're sweetening the deal. You can actually go ahead and give your own. We've already just been inspired to give a different challenge to the randomizer. That's right. Which we like to do at the end of every episode. And we're going to probably add more things to the mix. So please come tune into lives. Follow us on TikTok at Pull2Open, all one word, to find out when they happen. They're going to happen every weekend.
Yeah, and they're very visual. They're very visual because Pete has so much in his room, so many Easter eggs there. We just got a fantastic tour. There was a Sonic. There was an old book with a wonderful image of the Six Doctors. Yes, there's a Sonic. But this is the real Sonic. Love it. You get to see it on TikTok. This is like it's the TV remote control, but it is definitely no toy. It is very, very cool. We had a random appearance from Jack. It may or may not have been Captain Jack. Got to follow the line to find out. Yeah. So good stuff. And we're going to do some more on the socials. So we are on Twitter and Instagram, as I already said, at Pull2Open63. So tune in there. Do we have a challenge to our TikTok audience?
Do we?
Do we? The guess the episode feature I see written here.
Yes. Oh God. Yes. Okay. So I would love to. I would love to do this. I don't think it's going to work though, because the way we time it, you are going to need to. The podcast will be out. So here's the idea was that you would guess what our next episode was going to be, and if you're right, you'll get a no prize on TikTok. But I need to rethink this because I just realized as I wrote the note, and I should have deleted it. We actually have the podcast post before the TikTok live, so people could just listen to the podcast to find out where we're going next.
So if you're on TikTok and you have a time machine, let us know, because you can then participate in this feature. But I like the idea that we'll have something connected with TikTok Live that will give you the chance to win a guest spot on the podcast for a Q&A. I like this because we are becoming increasingly interactive as a podcast. So this is a great way to do it. You too can be part of the Pull2Open family.
Yeah, and we had a fabulous time talking to Phoebes in the middle of the week. Or was it Phoebes? I think it was Phoebes, or was it someone else? I forget. But basically, we did a test during the week, and we had a great little conversation with someone who just happened to be around on the live. So you never know when that's going to happen. That's right. And we'd love to we'd love to turn that into an official spot. We'd love more ideas even from you guys on how we can make the lives more interactive and fun. So please go ahead and leave comments on TikTok, or just ping us wherever you see us on social or YouTube, and we'd love to respond and see what we can do.
Yes, and same goes to Twitter and Instagram, where we're Pull2Open63. And
cool.
Do we have a lot of Doctor Who news this week?
We don't, and I'm anxious to get to the pod because we obviously had the longer game show segment there, but we did. There isn't a lot of Doctor Who news. I just wanted to mention there was a great tweet from one of the official accounts. I forget which one, but Shudigatwa was at Bad Wolf Studios, and he's clearly having a great time. He's always having a great time in all the little tidbits of behind the scenes that we've gotten. So we really like his energy. But one of the things was that he was by a wall mural that said, "This is the home of the Whoniverse," which is obviously an old term, and it's not necessarily officially saying anything there, but I do feel like it's unofficially saying something there, in that we've talked about several times in the podcast the idea of a Doctor Who sort of cinematic universe in the same way that Marvel kind of does it. And, we've talked about the rumors about different shows that might be centered around villains or monsters like the Daleks and the Cybermen or Missy or whomever. Which again, you could debate the merits of any one of those things, but I do love the idea, which this mural seems to suggest, if not confirm, that the people making Doctor Who now are really trying to think of it beyond just the show. And we're already seeing, I think, the first hints of that with the tie-ins to the comic strip now on Doctor Who magazine. And that I do feel like Russell T Davies realizes this not just as a fun thing to do, but just as a thing you kind of need to do to compete with all the other streaming properties out there.
Yeah.
So he's a good creator and a good sort of business strategist here.
Create the Whoniverse, and that's certainly going to keep the Disney folks very interested. We did see
absolutely.
In that latest Doctor Who magazine, he's talking a lot about the notes that Disney are giving on the new stories, but also the budget that Aligning with Disney Plus has given them. It's not 10 million an episode. He denied that rumor, but it's up there. They seem pretty happy with their budget. So it's exciting, and it's exciting to see that they are perhaps formalizing and standardizing everything in this terrible mishmash of canon that we call Doctor Who, perhaps into something of a more streamlined Whoniverse, and what a great name for it. MCU, is that a good name? I don't know. You debate that, but Whoniverse, that's like, we're going to be proud to use that moniker.
Yeah, I think Whoniverse has floated around a bit for a long time. I'm pretty sure the term probably first came out in the classic series at some point. And was kicked around fan circles, but I love to see it fully embraced. It's interesting how these universes get named. There was, I'm not even sure of the origin of Marvel Cinematic Universe, whether that was fan created or top down.
I imagine probably fan created, because it basically had to differentiate between, the Marvel stuff that had sort of already been out there, right? X-Men, Spider-Man, before Marvel itself kind of took control. So.
Yeah, and then there was the DC Extended Universe, which was a name that was definitely fan created, and it might have been even journalist created. In that there was a reference, I think, to this either deliberately or not, and then it was simply adopted by the fan community, and then sort of adopted by the powers that be. Obviously, there's been a lot of changes there. James Gunn's in charge. I'm not sure if he's using the term, but there was something written about this in terms of like, what even exactly is it? Honestly, I'm still not even sure, because there's the Arrowverse. We're getting on a tangent here.
Yeah, we really are.
I'm not talking about the DC universes. It's terms for universes.
Stop me before I start talking about Star Wars canon. We can talk about the Star Wars screen canon versus, the Legends versus... we don't want to go down that rabbit hole, because we have plenty of rabbit holes to go down.
We do.
In the next segment.
Speaking of big budgets for Doctor Who, I think that's a good transition to...
It is.
This episode that we're supposed to talk about finally, which is, of course, Revolution of the Daleks, which is unusual as a New Year's special, the last of the holiday specials so far. And it's, as I said earlier, it's a runtime of 71 minutes. So, Chris, what do you think? What should TLDW be? Which, of course, TLDW is our regular segment where one of us summarizes the plot of the Doctor Who story in question in record time. We allot a full 30 seconds for every 25-minute episode, or a full minute for a new series episode. You typically run 45 to 50 minutes. So this one should probably get you... I'm going to be generous, because, again, we have the fast pacing of the new series, and they're very, they pack a lot generally, and this one packs a lot into its runtime. I think a minute and a half fair.
Okay, I'm not going to dispute that. I was going to suggest maybe a minute 15, but that would be just Especially after your experience with Black Orchid last week, Pete, where you needed some extra time on that one.
I have blotted out my memory of that. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't remember.
It was good. It was a good summary. It just, you kind of, and what I loved was that you just kept charging through even after the minute was up. And we sort of said that this was, Black Orchid was supposed to be 4 episodes and lost half of its budget. So, we gave you a buy on that. So I'm appreciative of the extra time that I have to lose myself down rabbit holes. And yeah, I hadn't even thought of what I'm going to say here. It's all going to come out very randomly.
That's how we do it. That's how we do it at TLDW. Too long didn't watch Too Long Doctor Who. No notes. You're, no help, no co-pilot other than me with the timer. And you got a minute and a half. So are you ready, sir?
I think so. And my mind has just gone blank on several factors in this episode. So this should be fun. Let's see.
It'll be fun. Oh, yes. The fun official summary of Revolution of the Daleks. Here, coming up in 3, 2, 1, go.
Okay, so we start with a little bit of a flashback to Resolution. There's a Dalek shell coming from GCHQ and it's being transported somewhere. What's happening? The driver of the truck with the Dalek casing in it has been drugged, and the casing gets handed over to the Chris North character, who's the guy from Harkness in the UK, and he is talking to the future Prime Minister. Played by Harriet Walters, and they're arranging this whole thing with they're basically going to turn the Dalek into security drones. Meanwhile, the Doctor's in prison. She's been captured, but and she's been in there for a long time, far away from the fam. And but what's this? Captain Jack comes to rescue her and busts her out of prison. And they get back to the TARDIS, and they get back to the fam, who are trying to investigate this Dalek situation because they've seen a leaked video of it. And but it turns out the Doctor's been away for 10 months, and everyone's very angry with her. But they figure out the Dalek situation. They figure out that the Dalek itself in the casing has been growing a whole bunch of Daleks that are going to be beamed into the Dalek casings, and they shoot the Prime Minister and they shoot everyone. And the Doctor and Captain Jack and Chris North basically go around and get the Daleks eradicated by these other Daleks that come in, and then the Doctor destroys the Daleks in the emergency backup TARDIS that they have, and then Graham and Ryan leave the fam and go off on their own with psychic paper, and it's the Doctor.
And time. Not bad. Wow, I was impressed there. You really wrapped it up. The third act was like 10 seconds, I think, in your summary, but I was worried because you were just still in that. It wasn't quite the cold open, but all that sort of early stuff that is like in the first 5 minutes by 30, but when you got to about 30 seconds. So somehow you brought it home.
That is, it's sort of reflective of Revolution of the Daleks itself. And it does wrap things up very, very quickly.
Yeah.
I do love the scene of wrapping up with the spare TARDIS is sort of Chekhov's TARDIS. And, we from the timeless children, and it's used to great effect here. I love the image of billions of Daleks flying into the TARDIS. Whoever thought we'd see that? And then the fake out.
How are they not bumping into each other when they got into the TARDIS? I feel like they're so nicely going through that doorway one at a time, somehow figuring that out. Then hey, what are you doing, man?
Exactly. What Daleks queue? I mean, that's so British of them to queue up nicely and get in the Dalek. But it just, I've got to say, because this is one of those Dalek stories where the Daleks are constantly telling you what Daleks do not do.
True.
So I got to say, I don't think Daleks queue.
I don't think they do.
No,
but they don't queue with others. They I think maybe there's a standard pecking order. I gotta think maybe every single Dalek has a QR code. And so they kind of all are scanning each other all the time. And there's a clear hierarchy from the Emperor, the Supreme Dalek, all the way down to nobody Dalek ZZ 436 or whatever, right? Maybe that's it. And they're just okay, let's just go by QR code, guys. That's
the rankings could be redone depending on how many exterminations you've done.
You could move up and rank. Wow, I like this idea of the competitive Dalek society.
Gotta say, this is a great story. If you like Dalek exterminations, and you like that sort of the skeleton thing that we talked about during when we went to Dalek, you know, I believe that was the second Who story with the skeletons appearing during exterminations. There are so many here. I mean, I don't think I could even count them.
Well, it's funny you say that. It's one of the things in my notes of like the production values on this are like having. This is one of the great things again about this podcast where we jump around, and we were recently at Dalek. Relatively, it was a few months ago now. But you know, you think about seeing that episode in 2005 and seeing these great modern effects for the time, really upgrading the Daleks and making them look sort of awesome on screen finally. And then you now we're rocketed forward to 2021 and seeing that it's even way better. Like, I mean, this is like one of the most cinematic Doctor Who episodes ever made. That's including Day of the Doctor. And all the Dalek effects, like the beams themselves, even as they they're all like top notch. Like the Daleks, both versions, the defense drone Daleks and the new or rather than the new old Daleks look great. And there's tons of exterminating and ray beams fired all over the place. So
I'm glad you
that.
I'm glad you had that reaction. It is you're absolutely right. It's a very cinematic story in the way that it's so beautifully shot. And coming here from Black Orchid, like I was in the early parts of Revolution of the Daleks, I was like, is this a Viscount banger? You know, it definitely has that sort of, because it's just so beautiful. Every scene is beautiful. The extermination's just beautiful, which is a weird thing to say. But also, like, I gotta say, if you were a fan of warp noises, you know, have you ever found the TARDIS appearing? This is, my God, this has got to be one of your top episodes because you get so much of it. I mean, when the TARDIS finally appears in Graham's living room, it feels like it's appearing for about 10 minutes. You know, while the wind machine blows their hair, like lots of beautiful slow motion shots.
And there's more lens flares than the original Star Trek reboot movie.
Very
incredible.
I did, have to check once or twice to see that J.J. Abrams did not direct this episode.
Well, one of the things Chibnall does, and actually this is a thing I like about him. I know I give him a hard time about various things, but he has that cinematic quality. Yes. And I don't think anyone has used like datelines in Doctor Who quite to the same effect that he has. And I'll give him credit. He doesn't overdo it. He does it way more than anyone else ever has. But that thing, you know, it's like Osaka, Japan. And I think he's done this in other episodes too.
He loves it. Yeah. He absolutely does.
He doesn't overdo it. He does it like once a season. He'll do, I think it was one of the, I forget, was it 0 from 55 or no, it was one of the ones where they were running around the globe because of the virus or something.
Right.
Do you remember this? I forget which season it was. We'll get there. And
they certainly, but I believe they do it in Spyfall. They certainly do it in Power of the Doctor. There's quite a lot of it. And
it's kind of like, why not? You know, like it's movies do it for that drama and for that, okay, I'm grounding you somewhere. And, you know, then you have to deliver on the thing looking like the thing you're talking about. But it is like, it's a neat little device. I mean, go ahead and use it.
Absolutely, and I'm glad we're starting off with some praise for Chibnall because, you know, we're going to get into the issues.
of
why this doesn't work, and we got a lot to say. But yeah, I think you're absolutely right. He has a cinematic sensibility. He does have very weird priorities, but it is, you know, and again, this is the joy of going through Doctor Who randomly is we get to see the evolution. And one might even say the revolution of the show over the years, how much more beautiful it looks. And this is really, you know, no matter what we decide, whether we like this episode or not, it is definitely an interesting preview of the upcoming era of Doctor Who with Disney money.
Yeah.
Right. It's going to look like this, but even more beautiful. Like, you know, so even the dud notes and the weird priorities and the, you know, the plot's getting wrapped up. It's all, you can just let it wash over you because it's such beautiful wallpaper.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, even the bug creatures in the background are going to look good. But this is the thing about this episode, and it's definitely going from the playbook that Stephen Moffat would
Yes.
talk about with regard to holiday specials. Even though this isn't Christmas, it's New Year's, but it's like you got to be big and loud, and you've got to sort of overpower the sort of state that the person's in, whether it's they're celebrating Christmas or just on vacation or probably hungover from New Year's. And just you got to penetrate that with something huge, like a big action adventure romp, typically, or something that is just the pace just has to be go, go, go. Don't even question whatever nonsense I've just thrown in front of you.
Right.
I'm giving you some more nonsense to deal with, and then you just got to go. It does that, obviously. Like you have a huge prison break. You're seeing which gives you sort of guest shots, cameos of a bunch of other monsters. You have not one but two sets of Daleks. You're bringing back Chris Noth as the sort of scenery chewing, larger than life sort of Trump stand-in. You have
it's interesting, isn't it, that we're calling him Chris Noth instead of Robertson, which is just sort of a kind of terrible name for the character. But
well, he's also another Jack, yet another Jack. It's like Jack Harkness and Jack Robertson. It's like, all right, fair enough.
Too many Jacks. That's definitely the alternate title of this. But yeah, it's got a lot of stuff that sort of is it's a little transgressive. I think that's also important for Who and for a holiday special. You know, they kill the Prime Minister, and you've got to say that this episode was ahead of its time. I think in several ways. First of all, it was filmed in 2019, and you know we have these scenes of the government minister as Joe. Harriet Walter's character is then, she's about to become Prime Minister, and Chris Noth / Robertson puts on this whole scene for her of like people rioting, and this is how there's unrest, and there's always going to be more unrest. Now this was, appears at the end of 2020, beginning of 2021. We'd just been through the summer of the Black Lives Matter protests, and it's very much on people's minds of like, how do you deal with unrest? Do you let people protest, or do you basically go full fascist and responding to legitimate protests in the streets? And so this is very, very of its time, kind of accidentally. They didn't mean it to refer to 2020, obviously, but also I'm going to say it's ahead of its time because Joe, God, what was the Prime Minister's last name? Joe Patterson. Yes,
Patterson and Robertson.
God, send Chris Chibnall to character naming school. Jack Robertson, Joe. Such forgettable names, and I don't know why I went for them. Anyway, there's the scene where basically she becomes Prime Minister, and Robertson is saying, "Oh, I hear your party's looking for a new leader." And then she becomes basically the shortest serving Prime Minister in Doctor Who history, I understand.
Right.
When she's exterminated outside 10 Downing Street just after she's moved in. She's basically predicting Liz Truss.
I knew you were going there. Yeah. It's definitely upon reflection, watching it now in 2023, oh yeah, I guess those short-lived prime ministers, that's a thing.
Exactly. It's so perfect for the year we've just been through, 2022, the year of the three prime ministers. And I'm like, that was my reaction when Chris Noth has that line about, I hear your party's looking for a new leader. In my head, it was like, oh, obviously this episode is set in 2022. It could have taken place any time during then. Which leader is she replacing? We don't even know.
Yeah, the stuff you cited about the, responding to the Black Lives Matter movement, not really responding to it, because it's that's sort of our read post all of that. Yes and no. I think there isn't there could have been a better, more pointed exploration of sort of the security state. As such, it's really just plot, it feels like, and it feels kind of wrong, right? There's no sort of dangerous message in that this would resonate with some pro-security or pro-law and order point of view, because it's just presented as so cartoony, and there's no depth to it, right? Because it's is the takeaway the security state's bad if you entrust it to alien death machines, or is it just bad? I mean, they don't really have anything to say about it other than that. I also think it would have been more of its time. And again, this is not a strike against the episode at all. Don't get me wrong, but if it weren't for COVID, I feel like this was made pre-COVID. It was broadcast kind of in the middle of it. This
Yes.
was like done again. This is January 2021. So
Yeah, we were just starting to get the vaccines. They were just starting to come online.
right, exactly. And this is even pre-Delta, Omicron. And like anyway, that was the main thing on everyone's mind. So I remember watching it at the time, and it felt honestly a little weird to be looking at a show that didn't even acknowledge it. There were no masks anywhere. There were no, it's like, oh, this is, I mean, it's Doctor Who. It's a parallel universe at the best of times, but it just didn't feel like it was speaking to the moment much at all. And but also by that point, it was probably 6 months after the BLM protests and stuff. So, a lot of that had subsided. So I do feel like it. That said, I think there were opportunities to say more things, not necessarily about society in general, but even just about Doctor Who and the character. And I got to say, like, it misses doesn't really miss. It doesn't even attempt anything beyond the action movie yarn it's trying to do.
Well, it's not even trying to do the action movie yarn, right? Because so much of the episode is focused on the fam and weirdly, in particular, Ryan, which is just sort of, it's such a weird choice. We'll get to that, but I do want to stick with the good stuff first. I want to, front load the good things about this episode. And one of the things that it made me realize how many times in Doctor Who history we have squeezed some extra menace out of the Daleks by surrounding them with people who don't know what a Dalek is. Right. Yeah. We saw Genesis of the Daleks uses this to great effect. The Mark III travel machines. Yeah. Dalek does it to great effect, where they're the Metaltron. And here they're what, security drones, I think is sort of the official name.
Yeah. Or defense drones.
Defense drones, that's it. And when you see them emerge for the first time, first of all, I do actually really love the design of the Earthbound Daleks in this. They look fantastic.
It's really taking that sort of thrown together Dalek design from Resolution, and making it pretty. It makes it kind of nice, black and sleek, and even the sort of steampunk-like parts of it, like the eye stalk with the little ridges on it, the notches carved out. That's made more. It's better. I like the idea because it's not quite a meta comment. Maybe it is, in that you kind of just go with, like, regardless of how impractical this design might be, you're like, you're going to sort of honor the original design somehow, right? Like, so you can sort of see the people entrusted with improving upon the thing they were given. It's like, well, let's make it very recognizably this thing, but not. But make it prettier, right? Which is kind of like how the Daleks have evolved since the beginning, right? They're always still, at the end of the day, this sort of tin can floating around with a plunger on it and a couple other things sticking out of it. Like, it's like, there you go.
And it's sort of, and again, it is ahead of its time. I don't know if you heard the story about, there's a security robot. I think it's called the K2.
I remember that. I was covering tech at the time. Actually, briefly on the Daily Show in a clip talking about this.
Whoa!
One time I was on the Daily Show, which was only via clip, but it was amusing.
So there was a thing where the San Francisco Board of Supervisors, link in the show notes. I remember seeing it around about, like, I got a preview of it. I guess we both covered the K2 as journalists. Basically a security droid that doesn't look as menacing as a Dalek. They wisely kept the eye stalk and the plunger out of the design this time, but it was so it was recent. Just this year, the San Francisco supervisors had a vote on, like, whether this thing was allowed to use force, and they did say they did accede to whatever the police department wanted, and said yes, it is allowed to, I guess, stun people. Or I can't even remember how it, like, what its offensive weaponry was. Not a plunger to the face. That much I remember. But not quite an extermination.
If they're anything like the defense people here, they're completely disinterested. In exactly what's being built beneath the surface of this thing, clearly.
I did like the fact that the first weapon we see it use is a water cannon.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah, that was
because
cool.
they're sort of ramping up in what it can do, and at first off water cannon, second CS gas.
Yeah, I gotta say, like Revolution. Oh, sorry, is it Revolution? I keep getting them confused. Resolution of the Daleks? No, it's Revolution of the Daleks, referencing Resolution. Anyway, I
Yes.
gotta say, the setup is very good, and the thing you're expecting to see. Maybe me as a fan, I'm expecting different things than your sort of average hungover on New Year's person who just kind of wants something to maybe shut their brain off. But I was expecting to see something a little deeper on the stuff they were setting up. In other words, I was looking forward to like big water cannon and Daleks and somehow weaponizing that water cannon itself in some sort of interesting way. But it never really does that. I mean, as soon as they sort of turn red and the Dalek mutants are inside them, they're essentially Daleks for all intents and purposes. That not only do their guns work the right way, like regular exterminator guns, but they can fly. You know, they're full on Daleks, which I was like, again, missed opportunity. Like, I feel like seeing a group of watered down, all figuratively and literally, Daleks that humans actually have a chance against. I think you could tell a kind of an interesting story there. They're still hell-bent on killing people. They're still hell-bent on taking over. But now you don't have that same imbalance of completely overpowered humans by these alien death machines. There's something we can actually deal with. And I kind of wanted to see that. I kind of wanted to see like a more of a fair fight. To be honest,
I was really into two of the storylines here, right? The Daleks as security drones for the government. Love that idea. Really wanted to see it explored more. Love that they exterminate the Prime Minister outside of 10 Downing Street. Like, that is such a Doctor Who thing. By the way, my wife rewatching it turned to me at that point and said, they missed a trick by not having the Downing Street cat in there. Somehow, like, Larry the Downing Street cat. I'm not sure if you're familiar with him. He's often he was featured in a lot of memes. It is a Downing Street cat. It's been there since 2010. He's got more longevity than prime ministers. And the many memes of him standing outside Number 10, like they put a little speaker rostrum in front of him, and it's like, I'd like to announce that I have a new owner. They don't last very long, these strays. I take them in and try to housebreak them, but they're always gone after a few months. Love it, but that'd be nice reference thrown. So love that storyline. Would love to have seen it be explored more. Love the prison break storyline. Would love that to have had more room to breathe.
Oh, don't get me started. Okay, you did get me started. Finish your thought, and I'll have more to say about the prison break.
I will also say that then both of them have their kind of, Chris Chibnall wants to take both of them to focus on this other thing that is, you just sort of almost like screaming at them, like, no, don't focus on this other thing. And in both cases, like the Dalek security force storyline suddenly transitions is this whole thing with Leo, who is Robertson's science guy, being controlled by the Dalek that he's basically CRISPR'd a Dalek from Dalek cells, and he's created the octopus creature that we know and love, the colored creature as they are now. But then it turns out that like it gets into this sort of weird timeline thing where he's been building this facility all along in Osaka, but he just got taken over by a Dalek. So how did he have time to do this? And it just doesn't make any sense. And like, why even? I get that we want to have the reveal of the Daleks are behind this, and they've been, but it's too confusing. And to have all that focus on Leo, who's a character we don't really care about, we don't really have time to care about. Kind of just drags that whole plot line down. The Osaka stuff drags the plot line down, even though it's Captain Jack and Yaz, which you'd think would be a great pairing, and they have a lot of great stuff to see each other. Those scenes just sort of feel dead because they're just sort of running around this factory, and the reveal of they're all Daleks is not very surprising. So that, I think, didn't work. And then the prison break stuff, it's like, that we go from prison break to focusing on the fam being all upset about the Doctor being away for 10 months. Yeah. And the Doctor's been in a space prison. It's such a weird focus. It's such a weird way to draw the focus off what we know has been happening and onto the fam's sort of anxiety of having been away for 10 months. And I can't think of a single viewer, apparently, except Chris Chibnall, who's like, no, forget the Doctor's PTSD from being in a prison on the other side of the planet. Let's focus on how this affected the fam because she came back late. And you're just like, me as a viewer, I'm like, suck it up, fam.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, let's start there because you went through a lot of stuff wrong with the episode, and seriously, I could go deep on every single one of those things because you're so right that is like that. Tons and tons of this just does not work, and a lot of it's story, but some of it is a good chunk of it is emotional beats that just don't hit the way Chibnall thinks they do.
Yes.
So let's go ahead and start with that central thing, which seems to be a big emotional sort of struggle conflict within the episode, which is that the Doctor's been gone for 10 months, which seems like a random thing, right? She just happened to come 10 months later. I mean, she has a time machine. She just happened to arrive then. The TARDIS was off. Now, I think at its heart, I think this is okay in that we've seen this before with Rose, sort of brought back to Earth 12 months after she was picked up by the Ninth Doctor. And you can also read into it a little bit that the TARDIS is somewhat consciously doing this, maybe like, look, everyone needs a break. Everyone needs to find themselves for a bit, and we'll reunite later. So even though she might have been aiming for right after, I'll buy it that the TARDIS just kind of was like, no. But then you're so right. Like everyone's upset, particularly Yaz, that she hasn't been part of their lives for 10 months. And you're just like, you guys are just whiny children. Like, what are you talking about? Like, I get that, she showed you this thing and the Doctor does this, picks people up, and they make a lot of this throughout Doctor Who, that how can you go back to your life after the entire wonder of the cosmos has been opened up for you for so long. And that's interesting. But I'm also like, you signed up for this. They very much were like, we know what this is. We know it's dangerous. We know we could die at any moment. But we're signing up for this adventure. And then you're complaining that you're safe and sound despite all the mortal danger you've been in for the past 2 seasons. But you're back home and you're okay, and you just haven't seen your friend for 10 months. Like, that's your problem, really? Like, you really want here? I'm just going to finish this thought. You want Amy Pond to bust out of some time warp and just go like, "Excuse me, I had to have therapy as a kid because he didn't come back for 12 years. Then he didn't come back for 2 years. Then there was an alternate timeline where he didn't come back for something like 30 years. Okay, and that was erased. Fine. But guys, you have no idea. You're a bunch of whiny babies. Shut up. See you later. I'm going to go back into my Marvel Cinematic Universe and star in some great movies for a while. See ya."
Yes. Yeah, you want Sarah Jane just off screen. Like, oh, brother, let me tell you. Let me tell you how this works. And Captain Jack is right that, like, he was abandoned by the Doctor. Yeah. Like, he can totally trump everything that the fam has to complain about. But what really gets me is she steps out of the TARDIS. Her first words are, "I've been in space prison." Nobody pays attention to that.
Yeah.
Not even, like, Yaz's first response is to push her away. Like, Yaz, as a policewoman, should know, like, what it is to have been in space prison. Like,
some idea. Yeah.
Why are they just ignoring that?
Yeah.
She
weird. Couldn't come. She was a prisoner, and she was a prisoner for a long, long time by the what they're doing in that sort of thing where she's ticking off each day, I guess.
Yes.
All the walls are filled with these ticks. Did they even say at one point, is it decades, centuries, or something? Yeah, I think the implication is like centuries.
Yes, it is definitely hinted that it's a long, long time. So long that she's gotten around to reciting the first Harry Potter book to herself, which I want to say that scene, I think, was a missed opportunity because she says, I'm going to, "Well, Doctor, what should we do now, Doctor? How are we going to get to sleep, Doctor? Oh, well, let me tell you a classic story, Doctor. Do you want to, it's something like, do you want a classic story?" And it's like, "Oh, yes." And I really wanted, that was such an opportunity for, like, for the old school fans, if you're like, if she just then starts reciting the plot of the Sontaran experiment or something.
Yeah.
A classic story. Here it is. That would have been great. But Harry Potter is a bit sort of, yeah. I mean, yes, the Doctor was into Harry Potter in the Shakespeare Code, but still into it in 2021. I don't know. Get into.
So we've talked about the fam and their problem, and we can get a little bit into Ryan in a bit.
Yes.
But I want to switch tracks and sort of maybe go through the other issues a bit chronologically. So let's talk about the prison since we're on there. And so again, I actually don't really remember the end of the Timeless Children all that well. Somebody shows up and takes her to prison, or something, right?
The Jadoon
just do. And in that point, it's kind of seems like a tease, like, oh, this is going to get fleshed out later. And this is apparently the fleshing out, except there's no flesh. There's nothing to do with it. Like, there's basically, she's just in prison because she needs to be for this jailbreak to reunite her with Captain Jack. That's it. There's zero depth. There's no why. There's no, like, it's the Jadoon and some charges, but it's like there's 7,000 charges.
Other offenses,
Yeah, but I mean, there's no meaning to it. Who's actually the authority? Is there a person pulling the strings here? You get a little bit of the charges, but not really. You don't really even get a sense like what the problem is, why she's a criminal. Was there a trial? What is the agenda of putting her in the prison? Is she now on the run or not? I guess she is, but it's like, I guess something you could pull out at any time. Like, compare this with anything like we've seen, like an even Trial of a Time Lord. Like what you're just like, what was that? Like, what she was just there just for this action movie purpose, and there's and they're trying to do this epic thing that she's in there for centuries, and it's like you shouldn't do this thing and make it so throwaway. There's so much opportunity here, and we care. We're fans. We care. We want to know why she was there and what this has to do. This could be a season-long arc that it's just thrown in as an afterthought in an action movie yarn. Really, really annoying. Really leaves a bad taste in your mouth.
Absolutely, and I love all the, you know, it's great opportunity for the Doctor to, you know, when she's in her little exercise yard, talking to the other prisoners. You know, it's a great opportunity to see other monsters in there. The weeping angel that she calls Angie, you know, is a nice touch. I loved the thing about the silence. We were rewatching it, and I was like, oh, I'd forgot. Like, before realizing what I said, I was like, oh, I'd forgotten that the silence were in this. Before she has that great line of like, this is the great line of like, oh, I'd forgotten you were here, which is just, it's perfect. Love it. Great stuff. You know, the prison is actually comic relief in this, which is interesting. You know, which you would imagine it would be with the Doctor. Like, that's the only way that she can. And Jodie Whittaker, I want to give her a shout out for her acting in the prison scenes, because she perfectly manages to blend that sense of sheer exhaustion with the routine of prison, with the sort of the feistiness of the Doctor, with the sort of, you know, she's unbent, unbroken, unbound. Like, you know, she is going to fight her way through this, even though she's clearly struggling. They've not broken the Doctor, and that's conveyed mostly in her looks, which is just fantastic. So great job, Jodie. Sorry, also had to be in the script.
I like her little bits where she's like, "Good morning, camera 37, camera 38." You know, those are good too. Like, she's coping. She's figured out a way to deal with this, and it's to her credit and to the character's credit. So and there's more to say about the prison, but I need to get my nitpick out. So this is Pete's nitpick corner. We're going in deep. Okay. One of the first Dateline things they do, they say 79 billion light years away when they transfer the Doctor and the prison. And you just kind of like, okay, fair enough. I get it. It's far, far away. That's the point. But again, fans care about this stuff. Okay, 79 billion light years away. Let's unpack that for a second. So, in case you're not sure, a supercluster of galaxies is roughly like 100 million, 300 million light years long. This is a supercluster. Again, the local cluster, it's in the tens of millions. And then you get hundreds of millions when you get a supercluster. And, you know, others, like we have a supercluster, the Virgo supercluster, other superclusters are about, 300 million light years away. The furthest star we have ever seen, the furthest basically object we can even see from Earth, is 28 billion light years away, which is more than I thought it was, right? I thought it was more like 15 billion because of the age of the universe, but things are accelerating away, blah, 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 all this stuff. So I guess we can see about 28 billion light years away, and that's the furthest we can do. And this is 79 billion light years from Earth, which again, it's not impossible. Not impossible what we've seen in Doctor Who. Certainly not impossible given what we know about physics. Like maybe the universe is infinite. It could be. All that is true. But it is it's this scale that is unnecessarily big. You just kind of pulled out a big sounding number and put it in without much thought to it. And unfortunately, if you unpack it to the way I have, and again, I'm going to acknowledge no one's going to do this, but except fans, but it is like, well, wait a minute, like that, doesn't that just make everything just seem really small? Doesn't make it just question the relevance of everything we're seeing? And it just makes you think about a little bit like, well, if this is that big, what do we care about anything going on in the Milky Way? Like, what, like it's kind of nuts. Like, you don't have to go that big. You could have stayed in the same galaxy and I still would have bought it.
Yeah. What was the point of 79 billion? It's almost like we're being set up for the Doctor giving the fam a line like, hey, I was 79 billion light years away, Yeah. And none of you came to visit. So maybe use it again if you're going to mention it. But yeah, it is of a piece of this annoying tendency in Doctor Who to sort of like just go for really big numbers and really far. And I sort of think of it as we've been here since the dawn of time, Doctor. Problem. We've been here for billions of years, Doctor. Like you don't need to go that big.
Yeah, it just kind of makes you throw up your hands a bit, and also just makes clear it was not done deliberately, right? And be more deliberate, when you're making these stories. Like, well, why did you pick that number? Well, why not do this number? And then you might be able to do something a little more interesting with, something happening closer, right? Like, I got to give Star Trek credit. It thinks about this stuff. It didn't used to back in the old series. It did a little bit, but it didn't used to do that much. But now it's like, okay, wait, they've looked at what they've established, and it's like, well, what are the quadrants? Like, where are these things? And they've done some, I would say universe building, but it's really galaxy building within their universe. Now, again, Star Trek and Doctor Who, they're different properties. And Doctor Who, it's everywhere, anywhere, every star that ever was. That's a great canvas. It does change the rules a bit, but you should still have rules to some extent, right? Like, we still need to believe all of this is still happening in the same universe. Yeah. And once you sort of pick at these little sort of things that don't make sense, certain things start to unravel. And on a certain level, it doesn't negate everything, but you do start to sort of not care as much about the picture they're painting, because clearly they don't care about parts of it.
Yeah, and Chibnall cares
I went way longer than I thought I would on this thing, but it's indicative of a deeper problem of just the lack of care and being fans of your own show that you're making.
And so much of it could be solved if you didn't give all this time to specifically Ryan, where it's a lot of time spent with the Doctor sort of trying to figure out what's going on with Ryan and kind of being a little bit patronizing with him, I want to say. Like that scene where they talk about the beanie. Like Brian's sitting there in the TARDIS, he puts on a beanie, and the Doctor's like, I remember you wore a beanie when we first met. I was like, that guy can carry off a yellow beanie. Kind of read it a little patronizing to me. Like, that's all you've got to say about Ryan. And to be fair, Ryan is, no disrespect to Tosin Cole. He's a great actor. He's got this wonderful sort of calm energy about him. Really loved his work when we went to Rosa. And we went to the Witchfinders. I think those are two of his strongest episodes. He definitely showed his strength in the TARDIS team there. Here, it's just like, what the hell is going on with you, dude? Like, and more it's like, you don't even direct your anger at him. You direct your anger at Chibnall, because like, even just one scene with Ryan, like hang out with his friends or hang out with his dad, having fun with them, that would show us rather than tell. Like, why is Chibnall, who knows how you're supposed to show, not tell? He knows this. Everyone, like, it's such a basic script writing 101 thing. And here he is telling, not showing, that Ryan has sort of like, moved on.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
We're supposed to care. We're supposed to just care. And it's kind of a piece with what happened in the Timeless Children, which we discussed on the show before. This sort of weird mismatch of like, we're supposed to care about what Ryan is doing just as much as we care about the Doctor suddenly discovering that our entire life is a lie. And it's such a mismatch in that story. It's such a mismatch in this one. It's kind of annoying because it really does, you want them to kind of really pull the fam together at the last minute, but it just, it's just all over the place, and it's unfortunate, and really stops the story stone cold dead.
Totally.
And yeah, and then just to bring it to the end, and I know you had the same problem. Like we end with Ryan and Graham on the hill again. Ryan's trying to ride the bike again. They have a vision of Grace, which is just sort of like a bit kind of almost gets a bit too spiritual there.
Well, that was patronizing, I felt like, to the viewer.
Yeah.
I did
Grace
not want to
just sort of
see
appears.
some apparition. And she just sort of appears, and you're kind of like, well, wait a minute, what are you doing? And I guess for the way it's shot, she's just a vision.
Yes.
But are you bringing it back? Like, what is so weird?
What's going? How are you explaining the fact that they're both seeing her at the same time? Is it just supposed to be coincidence? Is it supposed to be a nod to spirituality that she does somehow live on? I don't know. But to have the choice to have that vision, and then for Ryan, in the very last time, as the shot pulls out, the very last thing we see of Ryan in Doctor Who is him falling off the bike again.
Right.
Like, that just felt so wrong to me. Like, this is Ryan's last few seconds on screen. Give him a win.
Yeah, absolutely.
Everything is set up to give him a win with the bike, and you've just had the Grace thing, so don't come at me with, like, it wouldn't be realistic for him to actually successfully pilot this bike in the last shot. Like, we've just had an unrealistic apparition, so give us some unrealism. Like, the audience, in as much as we're actually allowed to care about Ryan, we want him to succeed in that final shot. And the fact that he doesn't is just so lame.
Yeah, I don't know why they decided to do the circle. Like, they're coming all the way back, and literally they're in the exact same place that they started, even though they're talking about doing other things. Like, that is such a strange choice. Like, if you've changed and you've moved on, and now they're talking about being these, defenders of the earth.
Right,
and
with psychic paper.
Yeah, and we see that with Graham later in The Power of the Doctor to some extent. To come back, like, we're still on the hill, he's still doing the bike thing. And it also reminded me how badly they handled Ryan's apparent disability throughout his entire run, because it's referenced, like, I think once or twice after the first episode, but then he's generally simply a capable companion doing whatever. He kind of has it when he needs to, and doesn't when it's inconvenient, and that's really not cool. I mean, I think that's you talk about patronizing, and to audiences, it's like, that's like, wow, like, if you actually have that disability or any kind of muscular thing, and you kind of want to see it depicted in such a way that your strengths are shown, but also your weaknesses, I think it was a really you got to admire the attempt. I don't want to take too much away from it, because it's like, I don't want them not to try, but I do think you've got to try harder to make that something that'll resonate with that crew. I'd be curious to hear about anyone who has a disability and ever thought about Ryan as possibly sort of a cipher for them. Did that ever work for you?
That representation from the disabled community, for the disabled community, I will remember I was at New York Comic Con when they showed The Woman Who Fell to Earth. And there was actually someone in the audience who had the same disability as Ryan, who was just in tears that their condition was being represented on the screen. So yeah, I get it. Representation matters, but story matters too. And
does it ever?
Yeah, and do it one way or the other. Like, have him finally overcoming his disability, fine, or having him don't. But, like, let's explain it. Don't just like throw it in a visual thing at the end. And it just such a weird mismatch, and really gets at this sense that Chibnall does not know what he's doing, does not know how stories work.
Yeah, and I got to say, I think you're dead on. It brings the scene between him and Whittaker brings the adventure to a grinding halt. Like, I get he's doing it for pacing, but this is like a whiplash almost. Like, you're just in this sort of high octane adventure, and then suddenly it's this really, really understated performances, and there's no exposition. Like, everything just stops, and there's, to your point, there's no resonance because we haven't seen anything about Ryan, or even we haven't even really heard about it up until this point. other than maybe a tiny bit of stuff that's implied in the earlier conversation with Yaz, and they're trying to like get her to move on because clearly she's the most obsessed with getting the doctor back, which of course is clearly a setup in hindsight of her deepening feelings for Whittaker's doctor. Which all that's fine.
Yeah, it's a weird scene right there at the end, isn't it? Where it's sort of like they're sort of that you can sense almost this elation between the Doctor and Yaz that they're going to be on their own now.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know, Ryan and Graham definitely, you know, again, love you, Tosin Cole and Bradley Walsh. You're awesome actors. I think they were the weaker characters. I think they were dragging the fam down.
Yeah.
And it is, the audience, are kind of celebrating at that moment for that reason, right? We're like, almost feel a little bit better about, like, I don't want to be happy that you're going, Ryan, but like, almost, the Doctor's almost there with us, and she has this again very patronizing line of like, it's okay, I've got two hearts, one is sad, one is happy, like. Screw you, Doctor. I like that's you. I'm walking out the door, and you're super happy that like your main emotion is that you're super happy that Yaz is going to stay because you've got no third wheels now. It's basically what that scene reads like.
I didn't mind the two hearts line. I thought it was okay. We've sort of had similar lines, but yeah, I hear you. You kind of she's trying to do a balance and. It's not really super successful.
Yeah, I remember watching this at the time. I didn't know that that Ryan and Graham were going, and it just sort of like, yeah, it felt like the right move. It felt like, you know, I really want to see the Doctor and Yaz. They definitely have chemistry, and it never felt to me, you know, except with a few exceptions like Rosa, like Witchfinders, that the fam really had chemistry together, and they clearly did off screen. I think that perhaps kind of. Because Chibnall was seeing all of their off-screen chemistry, and the four of them were very good friends in real life. But I don't think that necessarily has ever carried over, you know, to a significant extent on screen. And maybe it's a problem with Three Companions. You know, we sort of saw with Black Orchid how, you know, the different ways you can handle Three Companions and how to have them all have fun and doing their own thing and feel like they have chemistry together. Maybe it's a failing with that it's just harder when you have that many in the TARDIS team.
It's definitely harder. I think, yeah. I mean, I think you really have to work for it when you have three companions. I mean, you really need to think about each script and how they're going to sort of bring something out of each person or have some kind of thing. I mean, this is certainly early on when you had Ian and Barbara and Susan, just write them out. You know, you'd be like, you know, someone would take a vacation, and so they'd be gone for a couple of episodes in those early days, and you get that a little bit even in the Davison era. But I just think it's just so much work for like week after week after week to have write for like a cast of four mains with the structure that Doctor Who has to make sure there's something interesting for them to do and things to come out. So I think. Yeah, it was an interesting call. I wonder upon reflection what Chris Chibnall thinks of that call. If it was, he'd probably defend it publicly, but should he have had four companions? I would see this as kind of a bit of a failed experiment. And it's again, nothing to your point, nothing against the actors. I think they're all up for it, but you just didn't really, whether it was a symptom of all of them or a weakness of the writing. I think it's both, but I think you have more opportunities to strengthen that writing when you're not so worried about divvying up the scraps that you have of screen time among four leads. Yeah.
And speaking of things that we were certainly I was worried about at the time, I think a lot of long-term fans are worried about, was like, we just come out of the Timeless Children, you had this massive change in the Doctor's background story, origin story, and we were kind of on tenterhooks wondering how are they going to handle it here. And,
we were, weren't
we? We were, and it's sort of handled with that one conversation with Ryan where the Doctor's, you know, he's like, what really did happen on Gallifrey? And the Doctor's like, I don't know who I am anymore. Everything's a lie. I don't know if we're like supposed to draw a comparison to Ryan's situation, because again, we've been told really nothing about the background of his 10 months away from the Doctor, which is supposed to have been really important and changed everything, and she's missed that time with him, and he's grown up or whatever. But yeah, it's sort of I like now looking back on it, like what was I worried about? Now we know that Timeless Child has sort of been consigned to the depths of the TARDIS, basically in that pocket watch form. You know,
so
it's fine. I'm not so worried about it.
Yeah, well, it didn't. Yeah, I'm sort of thinking back now to the sort of emotional state we were all in at that point, and now it's like, oh yeah, I actually completely forgot until she said it, and I think that probably let me enjoy the episode more, right? Because now it's like, oh, action romp, fun times, Daleks, blah blah blah, and I'm not so caught up in what they're going to do with this crazy upending of the canon. So it's kind of to the show's credit, as in the pantheon of Doctor Who now.
I mean, we know now that what Chibnall was going for was something much more vague than what showed up on screen, right? That this is sort of our post-mortem on the whole Timeless Child thing, is that it seems that he, speaking of the fact that Chibnall apparently looks at scripts a little differently than the rest of us do, thinks of story differently than the rest of us do. He thought he was being super vague. Yeah. He thought he was introducing Brain of Morbius style vagueness to the Doctor's past lives and regenerations, and he just sort of overshot and made it much more clear as a storyline. When it finally comes up on the screen, it seems really clear what has actually happened to us, and all his attempts to misdirect and throw in vagueness didn't work. But you can sort of see him maybe sort of post hoc trying to do that a little bit more.
It's a difficult thing to ignore, the Timeless Child storyline, but you know what? We're going to. So let's just ignore it right out, and let's get to a bit that I think you are kind of keen to get to, which is the Dalek versus Dalek action. The Dalek on Dalek. I love Dalek on Dalek. Don't get it, that is my favorite action. I mean, ever since Remembrance of the Daleks, and I've been very pro Dalek on Dalek, even in Revelation back in the classic series, where there's very little of it in the final episode, but you're getting this hint of factions of Daleks. It actually goes all the way back to Evil of the Daleks, right? When there was the humanized Daleks and stuff like that. And so this is cool, but I really admire this episode for trying to do a version of that could have been interesting. Unfortunately, it's not that interesting. And again, there's missed opportunity after missed opportunity. And one of the big ones is that virtually the moment the defense drone Daleks become true Daleks. And by the way, I think I'm going to call them double D Daleks. Defense drone Daleks. Double D Daleks essentially become Daleks, and then the Doctor, within a couple of minutes, calls the real Daleks, which she calls the Death Squad Daleks, and it's she calls them the SAS Special Forces or something of the Dalek race. And I heard that, and I was again thinking, talk about a distinction without a difference. How are Death Squad Daleks, which look, by the way, exactly like every other Dalek we've ever seen, any different from every Dalek we've ever seen? Which is that they're bent on exterminating, they're armed with their, zapper weapons. What? This harkens back to what I said about in Ascension of the Cybermen. Here are warrior class Cybermen, as opposed to the bricklaying Cybermen or the janitor Cybermen. Aren't all Cybermen warrior class Cybermen? I've never seen one that isn't a warrior class. So what are you talking about?
It has potential to be really interesting. I mean, and again, it's an area where I wish Chibnall had sort of had the courage of his convictions, because what they really are is they're not SAS. They're really more like SS Daleks.
Agreed.
They're like regular Daleks, but they're a bit more Nazi. Yeah. They're a bit more focused on the purity of the race, which is sort of their reason to come in here. And the Doctor brings them in because she knows they're going to annihilate the impure Daleks that have a little bit of, by the way, I'm starting to think that human DNA is the nut allergy of the Dalek world. It's no, this Dalek has been manufactured in a facility that may contain peanuts. They're so obsessed with the tiny amount of human DNA in the Dalek, and perhaps having been to Dalek, right, seeing what little bit of Rose's DNA did to that Dalek, like maybe for good reason, and that's another wonderful thing to be explored if there were more than 2 minutes to explore it here, right? But I like that idea of sort of an internal Dalek security force that is just so focused on the purity of the race above all else. But
it's not bad at all. And I think you're right. I think the difference comes out in sort of their motivations here, which is good. And like you say, it's interesting, but like you get like a millimeter of depth in this idea. And also, I kind of wanted to see the Defense Drone Daleks large and in charge for a bit. Like they managed to exterminate a few people in an airport and the prime minister and presumably all around Britain. But then again, they're basically almost within 5 minutes completely annihilated by the regular Daleks. And you're also kind of like not sure why. I mean, they kind of go out of their way to make these Defense Stone Daleks seem like regular Daleks. Like they're flying, they got exterminator weapons. Presumably they have shields and all this stuff. I mean, why wouldn't they? They have transmats, I guess, in their Dalek casings, which is how they get Dalek-fied. All the Dalek mutants get transmatted. Yet for some reason they're made mincemeat out of by the regular Daleks, which presumably, I don't know, you could argue numbers either way, which had more forces, but they're just completely trashed. And you're like, well, why? I mean, don't their beam weapons work? Are they just simply not as good? Which again, I would have liked a storyline that shows the Defense Stone Daleks doing pretty well against humans, but also still clearly more low rent and then blown up. It's just that's not what we saw on screen. So that's
and
annoying.
Also, the Doctor is a little bit incurious about the fact that these are essentially a new species of Dalek with a little bit of human DNA in them, right? And she's definitely not the Tom Baker have I the right Doctor, because she's essentially calling in the other Daleks to do a genocide on this sort of not even semi-human, but like 1% human, whatever it is. Like that's the kind of thing that the Doctor has been very interested in the past, and now she's just sort of like, nah, we'll just let them fight.
Yeah, it's also a little unclear like where that human element came in, I guess in the cloning process or something. Like, there's so much thing that just is thrown in just for the sake of like the plot needs to do this, right? And I mean, I could there's a litany of issues with this, right? So you mentioned the thing with Leo already. Like in the story as it's seen on screen, it looks like he has virtually no time between the time he's taken over by the Dalek mutant and then the Defense Stone Daleks become real Daleks. And it's just, well, how did they even build all that in what looked like overnight? That doesn't make sense. I guess the implication is it happened earlier, but it is like it's not paced properly for it to be that. So that's a big problem. Also, these Daleks, and admittedly we saw a little bit of this in Resolution, but I also didn't like it there because it did go into heretofore unknown spots where the Dalek mutants are. Like these Dalek mutants are totally different from the mutants that we've seen in the classic series and even prior to this. Like they basically are face huggers from Aliens, right? Like they're running around, they move fast, they can climb out of their casings.
They face hug Captain Jack.
Yeah, and not only that, but they can take over the minds of people by hanging onto their back. Like he calls Leo a puppet at one point, which again, kind of really cool horror movie vibes. I gotta give it credit for that. But
for sure,
we've never seen Daleks do this before. That they're just to do this thing that can take over people. And I think we saw some of this in Resolution, but again, that doesn't make it okay. It's just Daleks don't do this. They're not the puppet masters. That I guess they are now, but that we've never seen that before. And so it's kind of
Daleks do not have puppet shows.
Yeah, it's. I mean, I hate to again. I feel I'm the nitpicker. That's my thing. But it is like this kind of thing does annoy a certain kind of fan, and I think fans to some extent. I mean, you look at something like what they did with Vader in Rogue One, right? Where it's done in that he's like this super powerful dude, and they're basically shooting it like a modern day Star Wars thing, whereas it's kind of incongruent with what was shown in A New Hope and these other things. And more has been written about that, I'm sure. but it is like, okay, at least there you could kind of backfill a bit, right?
Yeah.
Whereas here, there's so much more that has been established that you have to go back and think, well, why have they never done this in this point, and this point, all the way back to the original Daleks thing where the original adventure where Ian takes the mutant out, right?
Yes.
Like if you're taking a mutant, like, and I gotta say, Leo's so dumb. I mean, like he literally uses his bare hands to take the Dalek while he's right in front of the incinerator. Like, couldn't you have just put the box in? Like, why did you have to open it?
It's recycling, I guess. Leo's really into recycling. Always put the box in the sci-fi box container. And, don't know if you have a sci-fi box bin outside for the trash people to take away. Now, this sort of brings up something that, and by the way, I'm just going to briefly, as the Star Wars guy, say that I loved what Vega did in Rogue One, because it kind of gives you the notion that that's why the fight with Obi-Wan later on in Star Wars is kind of so sclerotic, right? Because Vader's exhausted, because he just had this, he's a guy in his 50s and he just had this massive fight with a whole bunch of rebels, and like he's undercharged from that point.
You've seen the fan recut of that too, right?
I haven't, but they put it side by side.
Oh no, they've did a new version.
Yes,
CGI'd the fight.
I have.
With
they scale it up.
Effects. Yeah,
they scale it up and make Guinness actually look like a good swordsman.
Makes it look like David Prowse can actually see out of that thing.
Yeah, so this actually brings up a question. I wonder what you think about this, because this is, I've often been confused, like why do I have such an issue with Chibnall stories? And maybe a lot of you out there are having the same thing. Because it's like, we were rooting for Chibnall to succeed. We're rooting for his era to do good. The first female Doctor, there was no animus against Chris Chibnall. And he sort of does, like, everything that we're talking about is also sort of signatures of what Moffat does, right? They're squeezing too many ideas. So what do you think of the differences, Pete? Why is it that we sort of give Moffat a pass on this? Is it that is it that Chibnall is basically adding all the stuff, like with the fam, where he's doing Moffat plus inserting scenes about characters you haven't really been given a reason to care about? Is that it, or is there something deeper going on here?
It's a really good question, because there are similar issues, and I will say I don't entirely give Moffat a pass, but I do. No. Have more admiration for his era and the broader themes he was trying to do. And I think maybe that's where it comes in, where even though Moffat would irritate me to high heaven with his treatment, particularly of classic monsters and story in general, just wait till we get to the Power of Three. But I believed in the emotional beats. And I think you alluded to this with like the things that Chibnall didn't do, and he also didn't do it necessarily willy-nilly. I do feel like Chibnall sees Doctor Who almost like a buffet, and you can put whatever you want on the plate, and it doesn't matter if you're putting spring rolls beside haggis or whatever. Just have fun. It's all a thing you can do. Whereas I really felt like Moffat, as unusual as his meals were sometimes, he had a point. He had courses planned out. And he had people going on journeys with you that you cared about, and had development throughout that, and was very consciously developing his characters. And not in ways that were just talked at. You just said with Ryan. Yeah, like there's so much of it is just filled in, and again, we don't see it, and it's just done. So honestly, it feels like Tosin Cole can leave the show, and he can clear out the TARDIS a bit. It's penciled in at the end, which sometimes happens with TV, but it is like you could have done a little more. You could have earned it, even if you weren't planning this. And it felt like you should have been planning this. I think
yes. Yeah. I think that exactly. You're absolutely right. I think you've just sort of crystallized it in my head. You put your finger on it, that Moffat you always had a confidence with Moffat that he knew where he was going, that he had that overall story arc in mind, and you could sometimes be super surprised the way he would seem to be planning things like almost seasons in advance. We saw that with the Beast Below, kind of, and the surprising amount of sort of, War Doctor relevant stuff that would eventually show up in Day of the Doctor, that was there in right at the beginning of his first season. So it's fascinating, and you do have that confidence. Like you're right, it is comparable to a chef, and like you don't necessarily agree with a lot of his choices, but he has a sense of like what dishes he's serving you in what order. And Chibnall, like, even though he did allegedly have a whole master plan, a whole superstructure for his run of the seasons involving Timeless Child, that was supposed to be at the dead center of it, the revelation at the dead center. It doesn't feel like he has an overall plan. It does feel like he's sort of winging it, story to story. Yeah, which is interesting.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, there's so much. I mean, Moffat was disrespectful to the monsters as well, and I feel like Chibnall thinks he isn't, and in a sense, Revolution of the Daleks has a lot of reverence for the Daleks. You get to see two different kinds, and you get to see, like I said, we said how gorgeous it looks, and they get to do some fun exterminating. But ultimately, like you said, story matters. Like when they're so powerful, they're transmatting into these defense drones. They have full-on weapons and stuff. Like, you're kind of like, well, if they're that powerful just by building some stuff on Earth, you sort of get like what means anything. You know what I mean? Like you're constantly widening the parameters of a thing just to have some fun and advance whatever story you think you're telling, but it's got to work, right? It's got to be part of this universe. I'll contrast this with a Davies story a little bit, which I was actually just reminded of it because it was the Christmas season. It's The Next Doctor, and this involves Cybermen stranded kind of in the Victorian London, and they're kind of working with what they've got, right? They have these cyber shade things that look thrown together. They have the Cyber King that's kind of a steam engine version of a giant Cyberman, which is kind of nuts. But it's like, oh, I get it. Yeah, like they can't just instantly have a cyber empire that they built in secret, right? Like they've got to work with what's going on here. And I like that. I like seeing the monsters challenged and thinking on their feet, and kind of almost a little bit like underdogs, because that's kind of what I feel like you want to do with some of these classic monsters. And Cybermen sort of work well in that sense, right? We've talked about that before, that often when they're the last band of Cybermen or something, so that kind of works for them. But I do think I wouldn't mind seeing that with the Daleks. That's almost looked like what they were trying to do here. They're throwing together a Dalek empire from spare parts. But and that's kind of an interesting idea. Yeah. But then they're just one scene, one flip of the switch, they're just regular Daleks. And we're just in a regular invasion scenario. And it's just huge missed opportunity to do something a little more interesting.
It's a waste, and we were so ready. We were rooting for you. We were all rooting for you.
I feel like we've exhausted a lot of criticism, but we have not even talked about the pair of Jacks all that much here that we have with Harkness and Robertson.
Yeah, I'm glad. Let's talk about Captain Jack first of all. This was, we should mention, this was sort of John Barrowman's last appearance before he was cancelled by the BBC. He's basically blacklisted by them now.
He is?
Yes, there was, allegations of inappropriate touching, which and inappropriate exposure.
Oh, interesting. Okay,
yes.
I haven't kept fully on this, and again, it's not a thing I think we really want to go into that deep here on the podcast. No. But
part of the strike against him was that he sort of acknowledges himself in if you've seen the ballad of Russ and Julie that they did right at the end of the RTD era, they did a whole song that was based on a sketch by a British comedian called Victoria Wood, and a song called "Let's Do It." It's kind of famous in Britain. And they did. You may remember this. It's very popular on YouTube, easy to find. But he sort of, there's a line of like, photos of Johnny B. I can't even say on the air what they have in the line.
Well, I can imagine.
but like
listen,
he kind of winks at the camera at that moment. So
look, I'm not here to pass judgment on anybody.
Yeah.
I think you could. I'm sure I've actually read he's sort of apologized, and
yes,
I can't. I can't get on board with. I don't know. I don't know the details of everything, but I can't get on board really either way. Like whatever happened, and all I can talk about is the character of Captain Jack, and
right.
And the thing is, like, I think Captain Jack here is one of his better appearances. I think it's super fun. There's a lot of plot issues with his busting the Doctor out, and that I can get into that. But mostly, I think Jack works here in that
he does.
Yeah,
and he especially works. And I want to say thank you to the randomizer again for taking us to earlier Captain Jack, and specifically to the Master Trilogy and Last of the Time Lords, where they very much get at the fact that Jack is not actually a full-on fixed point in time. He will age, right? And this was something that
had work done.
He's had a little bit of work done. You can talk. A great exchange of lines with the Doctor there. And by the way, I liked that they play it that Jack is not interested at all. Doesn't even mention the fact that the Doctor is a woman now. In fact, there's a bit of a hint that he's less into the Doctor now, in terms of being attracted to her than he was when she was a man. It's interesting choice, kind of like that. But also, like when I watched this at the time, I was like, oh, they're sort of ruining it because I only remembered Jack as a fixed point in time. I didn't remember that they'd addressed the aging issue. Right. So now I'm fine with it. Now I can look past the fact that he's had a little bit of work done. It does seem a little bit old in this, a little bit more out of energy than traditional Jack. Like he's not quite. Watching this so closely after the Master Trilogy, it's
I mean, I hear you. It is a little bit. He's not bounding around the screen in the same way, but what he does really well here, he's the guy who blows things up, and you need a guy to blow things up in any action adventure romp. And it also solves the plot issue of like, where is the Doctor going to get explosives, and who's going to set them off for her, and when they're dealing with these Daleks and. Because the Doctor doesn't carry weapons. Well, Jack Harkness does. He has a square gun, which, by the way, I loved seeing again. Don't think you could shoot a Dalek mutant off someone's back with it. Like, just again, you got to be consistent with what you're doing. I mean, it's like, I guess he's a good shot with it and can predict the angle, I guess. Maybe we'll go with that, but kind of a silly thing for pinpoint accuracy.
Sure.
But he works really well. I liked this conversation with Yaz better than I liked Ryan's conversation with the Doctor.
Definitely.
Because mostly they're commiserating over having, feelings and whether it's feelings for the Doctor or when the Doctor comes in and out of your life and what you get to choose. So he's kind of the very gentle companion coming out of the woodwork saying like, hey, a version, not quite what we were saying earlier of like, get over it. But he is a little like, hey, you gotta take the bad with the good here. I mean, she's in your life, and that's awesome.
Yeah, you nearly need to arrange it so that he's having that conversation with the whole fam, because they all seem to be infected by the situation. But I guess just giving it to Yaz means that she is putting things in perspective and the other two aren't, and that's why they leave, I guess.
I guess.
You could see it that way.
I'll choose to see it that way. But anyway, it's a scene I think that works because we get it. It also does some good pacing because it's right before they get into the factory in Osaka that's making all the mutants. So that's all good. One thing that irritated me, even though I got to give Barrowman credit because he delivers it really, really well, is where he talks about he's immortal. And he sort of announces, I'm Jack Harkness and I'm immortal, which I think is a callback to stuff he said in Torchwood before. But it is like this Daleks pausing for the character to make announcements kind of moment. And it's almost like a meta comment that he has. And come on, like, it's just like as an action thing, it's a bit silly.
For me,
irritated me, but it didn't kill it. Yeah.
That was one of those moments where it's like, again, I was suddenly reminded of like Parting of the Ways and like, oh yeah, Jack does have these issues with Daleks. Like he has previous. And I love the sort of reference to that, but it's not really followed up. Like, you don't see any particular sense of Jack getting his revenge, any fear in his eyes, in particular about dealing with Daleks. He could have done a Chris Eccleston style, like, absolutely terrified of these things in Dalek, kind of moment. I totally think John Barrowman could have carried that off. But again, another wasted opportunity, feels like, for Captain Jack versus the Daleks in this episode. And it's because do you remember last week we sort of totally forgot, I'll put this on me, I totally forgot that Captain Jack was in this, and I thought that it was just Chris North's character. I thought it was just Mr. Big, because they are kind of samey in a way.
Yeah, well, speaking of people who have been cancelled, right? So let's move on to the other Jack. So Chris North, who probably won't be asked back, unfortunately. Again, less said about that, the better. But I actually thought Robertson works better here than he did in Interactives of the UK, where he's 100%. Just full on annoying. And it's better that, like, I hated in Interactives of the UK where they actually name check Trump for a bunch of reasons. I think it's just dumb, because I think the audience can figure out what this guy's about without actually getting it spelled out for him. It also dates that episode, which is always a bad call. I mean, not always, but it was a bad call in that case. And here,
it brings up too many questions. Like, we either stick to your alternate timeline where you have different prime ministers and presidents, or stick to our timeline. Pick a lane. Yeah,
exactly. But I like,
and to be fair, I don't like that Stephen Moffat did it either in Pyramid at the End of the World, Lie of the Land. Like, I didn't vote for the president; he's orange.
That was annoying.
Clearly referencing Trump.
I also thought it was a bad idea they actually name check Obama even at one point at any time, which was that was Davies, come to think of it. So you don't do that, Doctor Who. Stick to your own timeline, please.
And we'd already have President Winters, President-elect Winters, as he calls himself, in the Master Trilogy. Anyway, sorry, back to Robertson.
Well, I think here it's better. I like that you get to see him being effective, which is to say he's diabolical. He's organizing things around this, hijacking or grabbing parts and design from this Dalek to create his defense drone program. So you sort of get what he's even more of what he's about, like way more than you get from Ryan on what he's been doing. You get a lot of what Jack Robertson's been doing, and his relationship with the British Prime Minister. So they're kind of like these two peas in an evil pod, and she gets to smack him around a little bit in the forest, just verbally. So that's good. And then he gets to really show his true colors, on that he's going to sell out the human race to the, he knows who's going to win, and he wants to be on the winning side so much that he's going to, even the Daleks are a little dumbfounded. Like, wait a minute. Yeah. You're going to sell out your own race? It's like, yeah, totally. Ooh,
it's interesting.
This guy's a piece of work, isn't he?
We totally expect him to get exterminated at that point, because we've seen that character before a lot in Doctor Who, the character who will sell out the whole human race to the Daleks, right? I mean, I don't know if you have anyone particular coming to mind from the classic series, but it seems like a trope.
It is, but I like this trope, and I wish they'd even made it more explicit in the callback to Genesis of the Daleks, because obviously this is how the Daleks began, with Davros selling out his entire race to advance the Daleks. And it's like there's a bit of an echo here with Robertson doing that.
There is.
And it's interesting. I got to say, I admire the bold choice to have him large and in charge at the end, that he has won in a sense, because his reputation is skyrocketed because he's taken the credit for getting rid of the invasion. Smart.
Yeah, it does subvert the trope, which is great. I do think it's a little weird that he's given an exclusive interview to Emily Maitlis on Newsnight, which is like, she's an actual presenter, and it's a real TV show. And by the way, it's on at like 11 p.m. So I don't know why, Graham and Ryan are turning it off and then going straight to meeting the Doctor at like 11 p.m. at night, when it should be way past Graham's bedtime.
Special edition. It's a special edition of the program.
I guess
it's
Newsday
special.
Newsnight the next morning. Yeah, definitely. You just have Graham go off and be like, "Oh no, it's time for it's bedtime. I can't go with you this time, Doctor." a bit of a weird choice. But yeah, also I do like that they subvert that classic trope. I also like there's a bit of a Glass Onion vibe if you've seen that movie, the Knives Out sequel, which is sort of like spoiler alert. Spoiler alert.
Hold on. Don't give me a spoiler. I don't want the spoiler. I have not seen the movie. I'm going to see it someday.
All right. I'm going to make a completely unrelated point, which is that rich people are dumb. Yes, that is my point. It's no way related to Glass Onion. Forget that I ever. You will forget that I said the words Glass Onion. Anyway, rich people are dumb, and I sort of like that they have this. Robertson kind of really put that on full display with, like, he just doesn't get the TARDIS. He doesn't get the concept. And they kind of reference it in the show, which I thought was nice. Like, he's still, when he gets out of the TARDIS at the other end, it's like, what even happened? We were in my corridor. I don't get it. He doesn't even get to say the words that it's bigger on the inside because his brain is broken.
You just want to see the cops from Black Orchid come in here. Come on, dude.
Yeah, we got this in 1925.
There's our randomizer connection. Like, boom.
Yes, indeed. But also, the randomizer is definitely playing this notion of who is a companion. Is it anyone who's taken a trip in the TARDIS?
Right.
Is Robertson a companion?
He's a massive companion. He did a couple trips in the TARDIS. Yeah. It's like, oh wow, he's up there with Sarah Kingdom. He's in the TARDIS in an epic Dalek adventure, except he comes out unscathed.
Yeah, I really feel like as Doctor Who fans, we all need like a massive constitutional convention. Basically, we all get together, and this is going to be one of the first questions that we have to decide. Once and for all, who is a companion? Obviously, the new show has sort of messed with the classic concept of, like, you just take a trip in the TARDIS and you're a companion. And maybe also mess with the classics series' own version of that. As we saw in Black Orchid, it does include many more people if you make it that definition. So we got to come up with a new definition.
Subject of our next TikTok Live.
There we go.
Let's do it. What's a companion? What isn't? That's a very important question to answer. But guys,
I feel the segue coming on.
There are many other questions. Well, a few. That we also have to answer before we get out of this podcast, and those are the 4 questions to Doomsday. First question, which we've already just kind of answered, but there's probably more to say. Why did the randomizer take us here?
Well, first of all, you literally referenced this episode, I believe, in the show. Yeah, I believe you mentioned the return of Captain Jack in this story. I can't remember the context, but you definitely. It was a bit chilling when I re-listened to the Black Orchid podcast. There are probably people screaming at their phones right now because they just listened to it.
I said if they ended up being charged for murder and locked up, Captain Jack could come and bust them out because he's actually on Earth in 1925.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's right. You had Captain Jack breaking the Doctor out of jail decades early.
Oh, that's right. I called it.
You did.
Sorry,
you did.
Everybody.
So we got to be very, we got to be very careful what you say about the randomizer because it is listening. And yeah, I know. I feel like we need a mute button on our podcast interface for like when we want to talk behind the randomizer's back.
That's the best connection. I just broadly had the contrast of Black Orchid, which is kind of like laid back. It's all about fun and just partying, whereas this one's about fun, but it's high octane fun. So the pacing and the adrenaline level is on the opposite end of the scale. So it's basically the randomizers pacing us. And then we had something light, and now we needed something super energetic. So okay,
yeah, that was definitely a Doctor on Holiday story, and I guess the Doctor's, given the way the fam treats it, it certainly seems like the Doctor's time in prison was a vacation.
Yeah,
it's just like, oh yeah, space jail for 10 months sounds like fun. We've just been hanging around here in Sheffield, having lives,
eating chips,
going out, meeting people. Like, yeah, Sheffield is one, Doctor.
It's a hell. How could you leave us here?
Yeah, I guess it's sort of it's definitely a contrast with the short trip taken in Black Orchid with the policeman,
Right.
where the doctor's like, "Oh yeah, I could just run you up to the mansion." No, what we sort of had that notion of like, well, the doctor at the very start of the episode could not pilot the TARDIS, and here you have the issue of the TARDIS turning up late, 10 months too late, and another issue of definitely getting into this question. And the randomizer loves the TARDIS. We know that. And like I said, this is the story that you want to go to if you like the warp noises and you want minutes worth of them, because it happens again and again and again. They get very drawn out. The Doctor's really leaving the handbrake on this time.
Well, the randomizer loves the TARDIS, but it hates TARDIS impersonators. So it's the fact that the other TARDIS gets like winked out of existence in this one.
Yes.
Like the randomizer, I'm sure, was cheering, like, "Yeah, you fake. Get out of here."
The randomizer loves tiny TARDISes as well. It's sort of, because of Planet of Giants. It has not yet taken us to Flatline, but we've made many references to it. And here is tiny origami TARDIS, where I love the way that it folds up when all the Daleks are inside it. Like it's turning itself into an origami crane or something, It's a lovely effect.
If only they could have found the door control. But that older TARDIS, it's in a weird spot. It's like one of the tiny switches. They couldn't get their plungers around it.
I love that it's a honey trap for Doctor Who fans. Basically, all of these Daleks are major Who fans. They want to go into this fake TARDIS. They're like, "Wait a minute, this is not the control room I wanted to be photographed in. Explain."
Awesome. All right. That's a lot. That's a lot of connections for the randomizer. So I think we can move on to the second question, which is, what if the evil plot had succeeded?
Okay, so whose is the evil plot? This is often a problem that we have.
I guess you have two, excuse me, but they're nearly identical in terms of result, right? Because you have the defense drone Daleks, the double D Daleks, which want to exterminate all of humanity and turn the Earth into New Skaro, essentially. Or the the Death Squad Daleks, and their quote-unquote evil plot is to destroy all the impure Daleks. But as a bonus, they'll also conquer the Earth. But
there's also the evil plot of Jack and Joe, Robertson and the Prime Minister, which... if their plot sort of did succeed, it just they didn't know that there was another plot layered on top of it.
Yeah, I think that's a better evil one to go with, because I think what seems to happen, right, is like the Doctor is about to unmask the Daleks. So they don't make this explicit, but what I'm taking from it is their plan. The Daleks execute on their plan then faster than they were planning to, because if you think about it, it doesn't make sense. Like they're showing their hand way too early. Like they've only just been deployed, and now they're going to take over the world. And it's like, well, why not just pretend you're defense drones for a year or two, so you can get worldwide deployment, and then and clone a billion more Daleks, and then take over the Earth. That's a lot easier, right?
And maybe think a little bit more about your marketing. Maybe they can adapt your double D idea. That's much better. I'm really thinking like, they need like 50s jackets, like, 50s high school jackets, with like a little double D logo on it. I'm just picturing these, these Daleks with like bomber jackets on, and they're like, hey, maybe they're doing some finger clicking. Little West Side Story
put like
style.
a D within a D.
Exactly.
Doing the graphic design in my head here.
Yeah. Cut to the Dalek bowling team. The double Ds undefeated because they destroy the pins every time. I love that idea. Yeah. You really, they weren't thinking this through, and perhaps that was the human impurity that made them do that.
And by the way, we didn't touch on this at all, but I think we've actually touched on it in another podcast, which is to say, does no one remember Doomsday or the Stolen Earth? Like, why would you make defense drones that look almost identical to these things that invaded the Earth a couple times?
The crack in time or whatever. We did this with the Lie of the Land. Like this whole fact that people just don't remember the alien invasions, and it's part of it's not even like fixing the timeline. Part of it's just that humans forget, which is what Moffat is suggesting in Light of the Land. But it's got some real forgetting of history in this one.
Yeah, I mean, it's the vagueness. Like, it's like the vagueness thing you were talking about with Chibnall.
Yeah.
Like, they're trying to think that our alien invasion is really this vague. And in the classic series, at least, they were never really public. And you could kind of believe the Pertwee era a little bit notwithstanding. And I talked about that at the time, where there's like a few public things that they seem to acknowledge, and then they go back to it all being secret. Yeah, again, I don't think it ruins the episode at all. I just think it's a thing that I appreciated Moffat kind of explaining with the cracks in time. But I think you kind of every now and then need another explanation just to keep it fresh. Like there's some weird space-time reboot that sort of happens every now and then with the Earth. And what really happened? Did we really explore Mars before we met the Ice Warrior, et cetera, right? Like we all want it to happen in the same universe, but as we all know, it can't really, because all this stuff just is so contradictory.
I kind of almost want them to cut to like one guy with a Twitter account with 48 followers who's just sort of screaming into the void of like, has nobody got any memory of these things? They've invaded us multiple times. Come on, people. And he's got like 2 retweets.
Yeah. That'd be awesome. So anyway, did we answer the question? What if the evil plot had succeeded? I guess we're going with Robertson.
Yeah,
and which is ultimately becomes the Double D Daleks' evil plot succeeding, right? Because if their plot succeeds, they're deployed worldwide.
Right.
Then they
Daleks get New Skaro.
Yeah, they get New Skaro, and that probably becomes a more formidable thing that the Daleks would have trouble purifying, presumably. So, would have been interesting if only the Earth wasn't completely destroyed by that plot. Let's do it on another planet, though, because I kind of want to see that version of the Doctor Who universe where there are you expand on what sort of was going on in Remembrance of the Daleks, where you have 2 very active factions of Daleks that are essentially at war with each other, and that's just sort of happening in the background.
I do like this is another reason for the randomizer to take us here so soon after the Master trilogy, where the Master wants to turn Earth into New Gallifrey, and here's the Earth becoming New Skaro. The Earth, prime real estate if you want to rebuild your empire from the smoking ruins of your home planet. Come to Earth, folks.
Do it. All right. Who else came to Earth or somewhere else in this story? Could it have been perhaps one Clara Oswald splintered in time from the end of The Name of the Doctor? Got that episode right? Finally.
Yes. Well done. It was The Name of the Doctor. And
but
did step.
The question, I should just do it in the form of a question. Where is the Clara splinter?
Wait, do I have to do my answer in the form of the question? Is this actually Jeopardy? No.
Good.
What is Clara Oswald not being on screen at all? Yeah, it's. I guess maybe she could have set up the Osaka facility. Maybe
she could have.
She maybe got taken over by a Dalek much earlier.
That's not bad. But then, but how? Because like he's got the one clone, right? That takes over him. So I guess Clara sets up another one.
I guess so. Maybe she's in Robertson's pay, and or
I don't know. There's a lot of plot things here to sort of fix, but I don't like ones that require Clara to be sort of on the side of the bad guys.
Yeah, that's unfortunate.
I would favor Clara being Jack's supplier, essentially. So where is he getting all these explosives, these vortex manipulators, the bubble thingy that he uses to get Whittaker out of prison? It's never really explained, because why would you need to, right? Like, I mean, I don't know if it is a little convenient that he just has all this stuff, but I'm fine with like future Clara, some splinter version of her. She's some great supplier of gear for righteous causes, and she likes Captain Jack, and maybe they've even hooked up. Who knows?
Undoubtedly. I'm sure like at least 50% of the Clara splinters have hooked up with Captain Jack at some point. maybe there's a story where Captain Jack goes and discovers the Doctor's timeline on Trenzalore, jumps in it himself, and we could imagine what Captain Jack would do with that being splintered across time and always showing up with the Doctor in every story.
I would love it that she's the impossible girl for him as well. Because
Yes.
it's interesting parallel with Captain Jack that he's immortal, even more immortal than the Doctor now. And we
Yes.
know we'll go on to live much longer. I mean, knock on wood, Doctor. But I would love to see, again, notwithstanding whatever's going on with John Barrowman, but if they ever do return to the character, I actually would love to sort of see an older, wiser Jack at some point. Because what does Jack feel like? Think about, thousands of years in the future, now that he's had like lifetimes and lifetimes of experience. That might be kind of interesting. So, yeah.
Okay. I'm here for it, and I'm also here for the fourth question. But I think we need a question 4A on this.
Okay.
Usually, what is the rating?
Okay. Wait.
But
Dramatic.
sorry. So if you say it dramatically, then
setup.
I just wanted us to get straight to the question, because it's not actually a rating, but the question of what did your kids think of this?
Oh, yeah. Well, of course, the fourth question, as everyone knows, is the only question. The question that matters most. The question everyone's been waiting for in this podcast is, what did we think of this episode and how are we going to rate it? So our rating system here at Pull to Open, of course, has 4 ratings. First is a Dalek, apt. The apt Dalek.
The apt Dalek.
That means it's a good episode. Then there's an Ogron, which is perhaps a not so good episode. Then the Viscount Banger, which we reserve for the best of the best. And then the Professor Hater, which is perhaps a not so good episode, but maybe we learned something from it.
Yeah. Well, while I think of that, of my response to that,
we'll do 4A. And my kids liked it. And Jack said, it's funny. It's an episode we watched together fairly recently, right? Because this was New Year's 2021. So we all had a memory of having seen it. And Jack said it was better than he remembered. And that he liked the sort of the talk between Jack and Yaz, which I did too. Grace was really freaked out. I could tell. She's my daughter. She's younger. She's 9, and she was freaked out by the horror stuff with the Dalek mutants, which spoke well, I think, for that. That was definitely a hide behind the sofa moment for her. She expressed herself that she just didn't like it, and that. But I could tell she meant like she was scared.
Right. So Grace gives it 1 sofa up.
Exactly, and she also loves Captain Jack. She thinks he's an awesome character. He's super fun. She said that repeatedly. She just thought it was a really good episode because of him.
He really has got such an irrepressible enthusiasm. I can see, why kids enjoy the character, and why he works on a different level for, kids and adults, interestingly. And, but yeah, so they kind of liked it. They liked it better the second time around.
Yeah, they definitely liked it better the second time around. I think we all kind of liked it the first time, but they were like, oh yeah, better than, like I said, Jack saying better than I remember, and I will say that is basically my rating, better than I remember. For all the issues I have with it, and there are many that we've just talked about, I'm giving this one a Dalek. It's a bit of a impure Dalek, certainly.
It's got very flawed DNA.
I kind of, I'm a little disgusted with myself that I liked it, but I liked it. It was a fun action adventure. Captain Jack was fun. There was super cinematic stuff. Yeah, problems with the characters, but I was pleased to go on this adventure again.
Yeah, I mentioned at the top of the show that I was almost thinking Viscount Banger in the first 15 minutes or so, and I think that if you did a few tweaks to it, if you took the Ryan scenes out, or made the Ryans, or added a Ryan scene of Ryan having a great time with his dad, Ryan having a great time with his friends, even a montage sequence of Ryan having fun in Sheffield, that would have vastly improved this, and given those scenes some emotional weight. You could see your way clear to tweaking this so that it is a Viscount Banger. I'm going to say that. But it clearly isn't. There are just too many scenes that kind of stop you dead. So I'm going to say it's a double D Dalek.
All right.
It's perfect because it has that potential, right? But it may be just sort of an empty casing, but it has the potential for a mutant to kind of, teleport into it at any moment.
And level up the playing field, level up the game. Yep. They could do it. Maybe it'll happen someday. That's what we'll do with a Dalek invasion of modern world that is just the Viscount banger. Maybe there was one. I don't know. We actually haven't done them all, come to think of it, for the podcast yet. So we'll see.
Yeah.
But yeah, a lot of potential here, a lot of it wasted, but there's enough left over that it gets a 2 Daleks up. So good stuff.
2 double D Daleks straight up. All right.
It's time.
To go.
It's time to go. It's time to leave the revolution. Time to go forward in time with the randomizer and find out where we're going next. So the randomizer, of course, consists of 2 elements. One, the Pull to Open Codex, which is a list of every single televised adventure of Doctor Who, all in sequential order. And we will soon spin up the random element to find out which one we're going to, sir.
Yes.
So what is that?
Random.org, the website that doesn't use pseudo-random algorithms like computers normally do. They're notoriously terrible at true randomness. Even ChatGPT can't do true randomness. So we do it with atmospheric noise, which is what Dr. Mads Ha of the School of Computer Sciences and Statistics at Trinity College, Dublin, Ireland, giving me a shout out as the creator of random.org because we use this every week. Thank you, Dr. Mads. And it uses atmospheric noise, which is so doctorish. The idea of the Doctor just sort of sitting there with the TARDIS, hovering in midair, welcoming Daleks in. Talk about atmospheric noise. Billions of Daleks in the atmosphere. That would certainly create a random number. Anyway, we are able to plug in a minimum of 1 and a maximum of how many episodes do we have left, minus the time-locked ones?
Well, minus all the time-locked ones. So our count now is at 233 episodes to choose from. Of course, there's a total of 302, 233 left that we have not done for Pull to Open the podcast. So those are the numbers that we will enter in the randomizer between 1 and 233.
And in this season of Pull, this is the first season of Pull to Open since the codex was upgraded. It is a shiny new special weapons codex with the automatic ability to tell you what that number is of how many. And at first I was like, wow, we've done so many because I'm used to plugging in the number 302 and now it's 233. So it's like super excited. We've done like 70 stories on Pull to Open. That's kind of cool. But now that initial excitement has faded, and now I'm like, oh, we have 233 episodes of Pull to Open to go.
We still have well over 200. We've got several seasons of the podcast left in the future. But let's start advancing toward that future, 1 episode at a time. So are you ready with the random elements, sir, with the executor?
I'm ready with the executor. I've plugged in the numbers, and I'm going to challenge the randomizer because as we mentioned, we do like to give it challenges. My challenge is going to be I've got a taste for Dalek episodes, and we are kind of running behind on our Of the Daleks stories. I know I'm playing with fire here because the Dalek invasion of Earth could come up, but the randomizer could punish us.
Yeah, that's a long one.
With that, yeah. As soon as that happens, we're going on vacation, folks. Just want you to know. We can be on vacation for like a month. We'll have so many special episodes in the interim. No, I can't guarantee we'll do that. But yeah, Dalek Invasion of Earth is what we fear the most, perhaps.
I thought it wasn't the Daleks Master Plan?
Sorry, the Dalek Master Plan. Yeah, see, I'm confusing them already.
Dalek Invasion of Earth is kind of long, though. I mean, it's 6
also
episodes,
long.
So.
Also, but we've done that. We've done Genesis of the Daleks. Sure. We've done 6-episode Dalek one. But yeah, take us to a Dalek banger, please.
Ooh,
Mr. Randomizer, sir.
Let's do it. So I'm going to jump off of a comment we got on our TikTok live and merge that with something my daughter talked about in this episode. So on the TikTok live, prior to the broadcast, someone mentioned The Empty Child as their favorite episode, which is a great bit of horror Doctor Who. And Grace was set off a bit, like I said, about the horror in this episode in Revolution of the Daleks. Take us to something scary. I want some horror movie Doctor Who, something sort of maybe from the Philip Hinchcliffe era or The Empty Child or something. Give me something scary. We've done a lot. We've done Blink. You know, we've done Image of the Fendal and some of these sort of more Halloween-y episodes, but there's more. So give me something
That's right.
scary.
Take us to fear her, randomizer.
Could be. We got to get that one over with sometime.
We do. I'll be so glad once we do. All right, we're ready.
We're ready. Give you a countdown. Here we go. 4, 3, 2, 1.
Spoilers.
177. We're a New Who.
We are. And we're at another holiday special, The Doctor, the Widow, and the Wardrobe.
Wow. Okay. So we should have challenged the randomizer to give us another holiday special. Forgot to do that, but here we are, working our way through the holiday specials. We're in a constant state of Christmas here.
And it's good that to see that the randomizer's aversion to Matt Smith is cutting a little bit, because he's one of the underrepresented doctors. We've had a lot of Capaldi.
Very underrepresented. Maybe the randomizer has been Millie Brown has sort of influenced the randomizer with her, talking about how hot Matt Smith is. We talked about that last week. Maybe the randomizer's like, he's pretty hot, and he's particularly hot in this episode. So we will be rating the hotness of Matt Smith.
Yeah, he's hot in the cold of the snow planet, which turns out to be one of the Androzani things, which is another thing. Oh, yeah, you thought I was nitpicky here.
Oh, boy.
Just teasing you. I won't get that crazy, but
it's going to be such an interesting one, because I think I can barely remember the plot of this. I think it was a Christmas Day one, right? And so I was probably so drunk at this point.
Is a fun one. I've definitely returned to it a few times for holiday viewings over the years with the family. So I'm very familiar with it. So it's going to be fun. I haven't seen it in a couple years. It'll be a good one to go back to.
Bring it on.
All right, guys, we will see you then next week when we come back and talk about The Doctor, the Widow, and the Wardrobe on the podcast Pull to Open, which, yes, is a podcast, a thing that you subscribe to on a podcast app, but it's also a YouTube series / podcast, so you can subscribe to there. In fact, even if you do subscribe on your podcast app, we'd love it if you go over to YouTube. Also give us a follow there. That would be awesome, and you might even want to turn on notifications for when we have new content, if that's the primary way you want to encounter us, because we have all of our short videos and all of our plot summaries there too. We're on TikTok, of course, at Pull to Open, all one word, and we're doing TikTok lives every week right before we tape the episode. So please come and join us there, interact with us, and let us know what you think of the podcast and what you'd like to see. We're also on Twitter and Instagram, on both at Pull to Open 63. Drop us a line there, and wherever you are, whatever you're doing, enjoy the awesomeness that is the program Doctor Who.
Yes, indeed. Come follow us. Come into our TARDIS. We promise we won't origami you while you're in there. And every billionth follower gets a Double D Dalek special jacket. So look out for that.
Okay, take care, guys. We'll see you next time.